allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hope you got that invitation out to him.
Never had Jason. I don't know if the county can share it. Mr. Shelby. Here. Mr. Vanderhook. Here. Mr. Donners. Here. Mr. DeMiller. Here. Any additions or subtractions to today's agenda? Nothing. All those in favor of today's agenda? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any corrections to the June 25th, 2021 minutes? Sure.
Motion to accept. Support that.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Bids for flat road bridges.
We only got one that was submitted, so that was to that Adam Martin. Ernie tried a couple other places, one is too busy to submit and one would not. So we only got the one bid.
How much was that?
$945.
Just a question, but something that might have, why do you need that?
I just think we asked around to see what it was going to cost to do it, because not that many people work with flat roads.
Well, besides that, we should just leave that up to Ernie to have him find somebody and do it.
H&S came out and they gave me a verbal, and it was between $800 and $900 also at the time, but we turned them away when they were out here.
I don't know, I think we should just have I think we used to have just like a $5,000 deal where if it's less than that, Ernie just fixed it. Is that what Marty used to do?
That's what it was when they got changed and we wanted bids, so we got maybe we should put that on the agenda to discuss that the next time. If it's under a certain dollar amount that we don't need bids, then
Let's do that.
I'll put it on the agenda for the next time.
It's not really a bid, it's an estimate. So, we still should get estimates.
I'm just thinking of some of this stuff, by the time you wait another month, you've got more damage.
Well, since we only got the one estimate, and they're out of Ashton.
Yep.
Does that look to be in the ballpark of?
From the H&S, yeah, between 8 and 9.
Okay.
And McDowell Roofing came out, they were looking at it, but they needed their equipment, but then they got the job over at Baumgart's. So that kind of tied them up.
Those gotta be fixed, we only got the one, so I
Yep.
gotta do it.
Is that a motion?
Yep.
All those in favor? All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Page 50. Start with Nick.
Okay. We already talked about a little bit, our campgrounds have been busy this year, and going with Red One with that, not necessarily just the campgrounds, but parks in general. It seemed like last summer with COVID, everybody stayed close to home and they found our parks, and then they remembered where they are this year. So there's been a lot of activity out there. Day-to-day operations been busy, mowing and maintaining them. I mean, mowing has been slowed down a little bit, but with the rain we got last week, it kind of is perking right back up. There's week, which kinda took a little more time than needed to, but it is what it is. This one, weed maintenance in our wildlife areas, getting out, I would say we're probably 90% done with that. We got a few more spots we gotta hit, but for the most part, we got them all pretty well taken care of for the year. We will be at the fair in the commercial building, set up for that, I believe it's Thursday morning, so have to come up with some sort of activity for people to do. I would pay money to watch her show. Just throwing that out there, you put that in the paper. And the other big thing we got coming up, outdoor adventure night, we did not have it last year due to COVID, but we did have it 2 years ago. It's a really, really great event for families and just anybody that wants to come out to Willow Creek. It will be held on July 30th, which is a Friday night, from 5:30 to 8:30 at Willow Creek. We get the canoes and kayaks out. We usually have some archery targets set up. This year we'll have addles. We're getting the outreach trailer from the DNR, so they've got a bunch of different stuff in there, like axe throwing, so come on out and try something new.
The whole time, 5:30 to 8:30, or just
Come and go.
thing?
Yep, just come and go type thing. If you can't make it till 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and you come out and you do activities that you want. We usually do have a meal in the lodge, cook hot dogs, and have a free will donation for that, so.
2 years ago, it was really good.
Yeah, we had probably over 100 people at the park on Friday night, so, and it just so happens that this year is falling in the week that the Iowa High School Athletic Association and the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union put a moratorium on sports for that week, so they can't play any organized sports. They want people to go outside and reconnect with their family outdoors, so it just kinda worked out that way.
Well, we finished up our year end, so that's good. Working on daily stuff and then also waiting to print those tax statements, so everything's ready for that. Oh, and the mechanical bull, isn't that gonna be their
You're volunteering?
What?
Or the grease pig?
Yeah, I don't know. My kids are talking about the grease pig, but we'll see.
Thank you.
It'll be a surprise.
I think we got the roof taken care of over at the sheriff's. So far, no leak inside Kevin's closet. But we do have a water puddle up on the roof, so I got a hold of Bob Alexander and we've been trying to address that issue now, so, but other than that, looking good.
Recorder?
Well, we've been very busy with documents and votes and orders and marriage applications and genealogy requests.
Everybody must have a lot of free time. Mike?
Secondary roads, got Roger, he's working on that L16 bridge down there southwest, or southeast of May City. We've been blade grading a few roads, it's getting kinda dry, so we're kind of holding off on that. Kinda hard to get that dirt packed when it's so dry. Dave's been spraying thistles, and guys been maintaining and hauling gravel. And then I guess, that road trail there with the 3 pipes that were falling away in the tile, we've come to a resolution how to fix that. We're gonna have to replace that with the 48-inch, tear the 324s out, put a 48-inch in and fix the tile. And, gravel down there, we got all our gravel crushed at Linus Pit, and they crushed another 25,000 tons down there at Ashton, 4-8 pit for us, turned out pretty nice gravel, so, about what we're doing.
When are they gonna fix that road going out of Mo when I see it's all spray painted up?
They were supposed to be here the week of the 4th of July, but, last week, they said they were still coming, so they were supposed to be here by now, but they're not.
Thanks. Nolan?
So we did have a quiet juvenile day for the first time in quite some time, but I think wrapped up last month. We did successfully have 6 different sessions throughout the county, which was really good to get 20-some people there, both weeks, and really just talked about a lot of the issues facing us in the county. And, I think the message all about partnerships and working together. They're all big problems, no easy fix. But was grateful we had that opportunity to hold that in the county. Daycare, we've got our final strategic planning meeting this afternoon. We will get the strategic plan and discuss how that is going to be communicated and acted. Again, it's all about teamwork, just trying to, it's not going to be, a 6-month process. There's going to be steps in each stage to try to get us to get some more spaces and more options for people, so we can keep people and also bring people in. Northwest Iowa Development, they got me, I'm chair this year, so I will be a little busier running our regional group. We should have save the date. We are having a partner meeting that was supposed to be in Hayward last year. This year on September 9th, Debbie Durham, who's the head of the Iowa Economic Development Authority, will be the guest speaker. We've invited the governor, someone else as well. So we should have save the day, I think, last week, but we're moving to a lunch this year instead of an evening meal. So if you're around on September 9th and feel like a little day trip down to Hayward, that is that plan. The job boards up in the 2 libraries have got so far getting good feedback. There are actually people looking for jobs and are finding having a place to look with computers a good thing. So I'm still working on ch1 and Melwood just to see if we can at least get a sign up and things like that. But it's really just about having them be a resource partner. But yeah, I've gotten good. I talked to Tim and Ashton, and he said, yeah, people are actually looking, and he wants to even put it outside to grab some more attention. So just trying to do what we can to help. So fair, obviously this week, the website got been busy. I think the other fair website had an issue. So a lot of traffic to our website because the Facebook page from Fair points to our site. So just been trying to help Fair board. It's nice to have the event. And thank you for the cooler weather this year. I look forward to the 9:30 run tonight when it's not like 90 degrees out. So looking forward to the week. Good.
Well, thank you very much. Auditor?
We're just got a consolidated tax rate this week, so we're working on that, trying to get the taxes running, wait for BPT, of course. We have the city and school elections coming up in November, so we have to work on that, especially the new election laws that are in place. There's a lot of things that we have to make sure we got our I's dotted and our T's crossed on that. Got through year end, so we're good.
Well, thank you everybody for your updates this morning. And Jason brought donuts today, so. Adam.
Stephanie, did I hear you volunteer for the pizza?
Okay, wait, tell us how does this work?
She mentioned running.
What do you have to do?
Running's it. I don't know.
Well, you gotta catch the streak.
Well, I know, but like my kids are saying there's a
I'm
team.
just hearing.
Yeah, you can get a team.
That's what I'm seeing.
Wait, so you just gotta catch it and hold it?
You gotta catch the thing, and you gotta break it to the circle, and you gotta hold it there for so many seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's the last thing.
Or ride the bull, one of the two. Ride the bull.
The grease thing is on more.
No, this is real.
Mechanical.
That sounds like a way to get a concussion.
Pat, yeah,
Very
Pat.
I've seen Urban Doctor. If you do it, I'll do it.
The grease tankers are.
I'm in very good shape.
Sounds like it.
I think that's pretty safe.
They have a chiropractor.
Kind of like flat. Thanks for all the help with that.
No, I was happy to, easy and quick, and glad to learn website traffic and, good stuff for it.
All right, 9 o'clock, discuss house assessment.
Hello again.
Stephanie.
So, I haven't come begging to you guys yet, just with the housing assessment. I did get quotes earlier in the year. Housing is definitely something, I'm buying papers going back 20 years of housing concerns in the county. It was part of our office strategic plan, which was approved in March, and at our March agenda, we discussed housing assessments, and at the time, I'd gotten a couple quotes for countywide, just to see
what are we talking about? And the quotes are anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000. I reached out to companies that Rock Valley and Sheldon use, and another one that Rock Rapids use. This is something most cities do all the time. It's like a strategic plan. They might have a new one, and then every 3 years they go back and they check it, just to stay on top of what the trends are. And a lot of times it's a process you need to do. Okay, they have a plan to kind of what it's like for certain state programs. You need to have done this. We didn't act on it at our March board meeting because the state, through the Empower Rural Iowa program, announced two rural grants. One was housing assessment, one was innovation. I did pass that on to all the city clerks and council people at the time, which is what I do. If there's tools, I pass it on to the people. Counties can't apply for that. So it's a state grant, it's run in partnership with Iowa State Extension Office. My feeling was, well, hey, the cities can maybe apply for this one. I was told, I know Sibley Council approved them going for it. The state did not. I don't know that they applied, but I know both Rock Valley and Sheldon got this grant. Because of the leadership program and our work with Extension, I've talked to Jane Gokin several times. She's called me to say, are any of your communities interested? My idea was to wait and see if anyone got it, Sibley got it, and then maybe try to tap on the communities that, like whether Ashland wants to or Melvin wants to. But, the city has to be a partner. It just can't, I can help coordinate, but we would need a team in each community. And I would happily try to coordinate this if we can. It's a lot cheaper through a grant, of course. I think you pay $5,000, you get $10,000. Yeah, I can't remember the parameters, but it's a much more affordable option. They are hoping the state's hoping to open this up in the fall, so counties could be the applicant, but that's depending on changing the rules for it and if there's money for it. So, I'm always here to work with anybody that wants to try and fix these big issues that we have, but in terms of the assessment, whether we would go forward on a county one, that obviously my board starts there, and then we'd have to try to get funding, and I really didn't feel like coming around asking for $5 grand from all the different partners just yet, if there was some state money available for grants. So that's kind of what I've done. There's a lot of things I work on all the time that not everybody knows about, but I certainly spoke at length with 2 different companies earlier this year to get quotes. That's a lot of money, just like the daycare. So, do you have questions for me?
But there is, grant money available for the cities.
Yes,
To take the initiative and go ahead.
Yes, there was money for 10 of them. The first round, I believe 8 got it, so then they had a little bit more money left. That's where Iowa State Extension was trying to reach out to some they thought could possibly do it. There was another deadline last Friday for cities, and I was told cities have to be the ones to apply. They have to be handling the money, and they have to have a team of people. So I'm here to be a resource, but I can't drive a city applicant, a grant from the city side, so.
What are they exposed to as far as their costs on that?
I think it's five, I believe they have a $5,000 match, and then they get like a $10,000 grant.
Is there room for the county to do a grant program to our cities to incentivize them carrying less of the local match portion?
It's hard to know if that was the reason there wasn't an application. But I sent the update, and I can't speak for all the cities of whether this is the right time. I talked to different city clerks throughout the year on different things, but, this takes a point person, someone from each county. There's a lot of pieces to it, so, that could be something that we could.
And that's Iowa State leadership. Of course, you mentioned that participated in it, and housing consistently came up. Resources of employers and renters and.
Right. But every county need is different, land availability. I couldn't speak to what in each town would be possible, but it is all about getting a team in each community that can help be a point person. So there is no current grant cycle now for this state grant because it closed off again Friday unless more money pops up. I'm in communication with Jane out of the Spencer Office Extension all the time. don't know how quickly they'll turn around and give out the next little bit of excess money, but I talked to someone from Iowa EDA about the county piece, because I said, look, can I apply? And she said, not yet, but maybe in the fall.
But it still boils down to the cities have to take the initiative to start the ball rolling to do it.
For the state grant, for sure. For a wider one, I mean, I would still need to have people in each community, and for them to say this is the time for us to do this.
They still need to be involved and participate.
Right, yeah.
They can't just be, we can't do it.
Yeah.
We can't do that one, but if we're not saying that, and we recognize there's a housing need, then.
Well, I think we all know there's housing.
Right, but so, sitting back and waiting for them to do it, if they're not, maybe isn't the best course of action either.
It would be nice to assist.
And I'm happy to, whatever that looks like.
But there's a difference between assisting and doing it for them. We can't do it for them.
Yeah.
But they have to participate with us in order to make this happen. And if nobody wants to come to us and say, hey, you guys want to participate, they gotta get somebody to.
Well, that's why I'm saying maybe it's time that we just consider the cost and do it anyway if they're not the ones
Put that option out
initiating
there.
it.
I know, but they still have to participate, even if we're the ones that go that other route to do a countywide one, they still have to work with it.
Oh, yeah. We let them know we're here to assist.
And I would be happy to do the round, all council meetings with it specifically and say, look, do you have somebody, or ideally probably 2 to 3 people from each community who would be the point people to help drive it. I don't know existing inventory, in every town, there's just no way. I don't know what acquisition is possible for each town, but, if we don't go through the state, there's plenty of companies that do this, it's a higher price tag, but, and it could be 5-month process, one of them said it was $23,000, 5-month process, another one was 90 days, about $20,000. Northwest Iowa Planning can do it, but they've been told theirs is very basic, so theirs is probably not quite what we need, but I did talk to Ted there if he wants to go as well, so.
But there might be funding available for counties.
Yeah.
After.
Sometime this fall, that's all I was told, and I will stay in contact with both state contact and Jane, because, we can see what happens with this current round that was last week. I don't think it'll take them that long, if it's just a little bit of excess money, I don't think we're talking months, but we can keep revisiting, but,
I kinda hate the waiting game and hoping
I know.
that something comes for counties. I'm relatively certain if we start the process and then something comes out, we won't be able to apply and have that reimburse our efforts. Heaven forbid you do what they want you to do before they incentivize it.
I get it, it's about utilizing another state resource, which is the extension office, and what they do anyway with data and things like that, so,
So when is the soonest you could apply for that?
I've only been told the fall for possibly fall if there's extra money, and they changed the code or changed the rules so that county could apply. So, we could be talking 3 months. But yeah, my goal was this week, touch base now that that closed again Friday, just to get another update from the state and the extension, and I can keep you posted. But like I said, I'll revisit with my board as well. These quotes I received in March and January of this year, so this has been on my agenda to try to figure a way out to do this, but they're not cheap. They're a huge report, there's so many stages to it, so. But I'm always happy to coordinate and talk about it and explain what the processes are, but.
Have any of the other cities reached out with any interest in?
I haven't, other than I've sent it on email, and I did send it again to Ashton, I was just at their council meeting a couple weeks ago. But I've not, sometimes you give updates and then later you're like, well, I wish I would have pushed that point more, but daycare's been a big point I'm trying to push. Who's out there doing it, are there any home, so these are both really big, and I'm, doing my best, but with the housing, I think that was probably gonna be a specific one-on-one conversation with the clerks and try to go from there, but I can't answer for them if this is the time, or if they're even interested right now, so I would have to be pointed to that conversation. But happy to do it, just.
To me, this area, in our role has a far more direct impact on what we deal with. You're starting to increase valuations, you're bringing in new revenue year after year. It's a great investment. I've never shied away of looking at opportunities to bring in jobs, but that doesn't mean they're gonna live here, and it doesn't mean it moves our resources much, so.
And I did talk to the review last week, I don't know if that was in the paper on Saturday about housing, you know, and, I mean, it's, like I said, I can pull out 10 different articles about housing shortages, and I mean, it just, it's challenging, it's ongoing. So yeah, there's, I would come to you with a financial request if that's the stage we were at. We're just not quite there because of the state grant, so I just wanted to.
Maybe the hospital wants to chip in some money, because that helps them with their federal funding.
So, you know, just like the daycare partnership, you know, that was something that the hospital did drive, but, I'll just keep you posted. I just wanted to give you that update.
Would you be willing to look into and report back, or
Yeah.
possibly provide an option for us trying to financially participate with cities applying for that grant and getting it rolling that way? I guess it is 5,000 for each city match, and we do have to, just throwing something out there, half of it, maybe that moves the needle for them, gets their attention more.
Yeah, and I plan to reach out to each of the clerks and just say, look, you know, can you give me a sense what your interest level or council's interest level would be to do something like this?
Or your representative for each community on.
Well, sure.
Yeah. Might be a good search.
Yeah, I mean, all of the, I've worked this long on that, but it's just like anything, we're all committed, you know, to work stuff and personal things, and it's about someone being ready to know that they're gonna help drive something, you know, it will take a team, so. If there's other questions, let me know, but that's the process to date, you know, and my method, logic behind it, so. Okay.
Super, thank you. So we're about to 9:15. Was Jack calling in for that, or we're just looking over what he's done now?
Yeah, just look over what he's done, if he's available.
Did you guys need me for anything more than drainage district things, or this, or?
You're always needed.
You do a lot that I don't know about.
Do you want me to come back to them, or?
We'll call you.
Okay.
You'll be downstairs.
Yeah. All right.
Super,
Don't
thanks,
forget your
Mike.
donut.
What's that?
Don't forget your donut.
I'm good. Oh, and one, did you guys, I know I threw that in a little late about the tier rail trail deal between the concrete and the corrugated metal pipe. And we're gonna go ahead, and I do feel like the concrete is the better solution, but corrugated metal pipe is a little cheaper. Is there any, and that's just a very, very, very rough quote, you know, that's something I threw together real quick, but $20,000, you'll get that fixed. We look at them pipe, there's no adding to them or anything, they're too far gone, so we would have to replace the whole 3 lines with 1 line 48, is what's going on there.
Personally, I'd lean towards Scott.
We're on that trail over by,
By Harris.
yeah.
That's just my thought. I lean towards concrete.
So, just a little thought or two out there. I didn't get my prices back till 9:30 yesterday morning, so it's too late to have it on the agenda, so.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, please, Mike.
9:15. Is that it?
What, Jack's thing?
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, here it is. Open a closed session, that's this.
You have to be closed, Jack.
All right then. I gave everybody the
You
option.
have to be closed session, that's what the applicant wanted.
So if we're discussing offering a contract to an applicant without mentioning the applicant or his qualifications, to me, I don't read the closed session.
Jack told me it had to
So
be
would you
closed.
say that that's what it's for?
That's what the applicant wanted, but.
If we're gonna discuss him and his qualifications directly tied to this, I don't disagree, but the code section says if the discussion potential will be injurious to their reputation. I don't see how us deciding to extend a contract.
But discussing it the way with contracts and what it might be put us at a disadvantage for other people that might be looking at the job.
I already made one offer that was public record and.
I had to get with Jack, I talked to him about it, and he said it had to be closed, so.
I'll go along with Jack, he says it should be closed.
I think, and I spoke to Jason about this, I think that this is certainly a discussion you could have an open session, in my opinion, but as Jason and I discussed, this could go quickly into territory where some specifics about the applicant would be discussed whether you would want it to be a closed session. So really, it would be up to the board whether you wanted to start this in closed session, or whether you wanted to just be ready to take this into closed session if we start talking specifics about this applicant.
You made the motion, didn't you, Jerry?
Yep.
I'll support it.
Make a motion.
I did.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Shelby. Mr. Moore.
Aye.
Mr. Vander.
Nay.
I guess I'll go aye.
We'll wait for.
You know which way, okay.
Come in the book.
Yeah, this will be a long.
What Jack told me when I had to be so special.
We're in closed session.
And they just voted.
Jerry made the motion, and second. He'll go, we voted yes, you'll see how we went out.
So the motion just accept the contract as.
Discuss the draft as, Jerry,
I'll make that motion to accept this draft.
then have the draft submitted to the applicant. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All those abstaining?
I'll abstain.
Motion carries. All right, we are on point 9:30.
Well, I think no one wants to talk about the
So
cameras.
if we could squeeze in the
Oh,
camera.
absolutely. Yeah.
No,
Okay, so, as you guys remember, I think it was back in April, we talked about getting, some new camera and monitor equipment for upstairs at the courthouse. We decided we were gonna have Super High Tech do the work, and that they were going to install 2 monitors in my office and an additional camera. Since then, there have been a significant number of delays in getting that project done. I know Maureen has spoken with Super High Tech on a number of occasions, not sure how many times. I've spoken to them 3 times, and each time I get, this basic kind of vague message of, well, there's 1 or 2 people ahead of you in line, we think we're gonna get to it real soon. It's been real soon since early May. As it stands right now, I have less video monitoring equipment up there than I had before the renovation of my office. I don't have a motion sensor that works anymore, I don't have a monitor that's installed, and I don't have a camera that's currently functioning or hooked up. And Super High Tech was to basically reconfigure the existing equipment so that it would work with the monitors. So far, all we've gotten done is Edge Electric has come in and installed the necessary outlets to power the equipment we're gonna get. We haven't had any movement on the security camera system or the monitors actually being installed, and I'm not really very happy with where we're at in terms of the answers we're getting. My last conversation with Super High Tech was approximately 2 weeks ago, when they said they thought that they would be on within the next couple of weeks, and there was only 1 project ahead of us. Well, that was essentially the answer I got the last time I talked to them, which I believe would have been in May or late June, or early June. Since then, I've discussed this concern with a number of folks, including my assistant, and, full disclosure, my assistant's fiance runs his own IT company. He's in charge of all the IT at, Lakes Marina over at Okoboji. Significant number of properties, does all their IT infrastructure, lots of experience, and he has, explained, and provided us with a letter that direct us to where we can purchase the monitors and purchase the cameras as needed at a significant discount to what we would be paying Super High Tech to purchase them and install them for us, and we would avoid the markup. He also said if we don't want to do that, he can buy them for us at a markup and then install them, and he believes it would be cheaper than what we contracted Super High Tech to essentially do the work at. So what I'm here today to say to you guys is, if you guys would like to explore not having Super High Tech do this and instead having Mr. Story do this, I think that would be a viable option for us getting this done in a faster time frame than we otherwise would. And to be honest, I think that I have communicated my concerns with the lack of monitoring equipment both to this board, and you guys have been very helpful, but I've repeatedly communicated my concerns to Super High Tech, and it doesn't seem to do anything. I don't like not having those monitors up there on busy court days. As anybody who works in this courthouse could tell you, we've had a number of very contentious juvenile court hearings recently that everyone in the courthouse has got to hear about. Law enforcement has been called on a number of occasions to the courthouse, and there have been some pretty dicey days upstairs in the past couple of months. Given the cases that we're dealing with and the time frame we're on, I don't expect that that will abate anytime soon. And I really would like to have something up there where I can see what's going on, where I'm sitting at my desk, and where my assistant can see what's going on while she's sitting at her desk, so we can, act accordingly if we need to. And this seems like an option that we should at least explore. I'm not gonna tell you we need to cancel the contract with Super High Tech, I'm not gonna tell you we need to go one way or the other, but I would at least like it if we would go ahead and give, this gentleman a chance to show us, what he could do in terms of price and time frame to get this solution taken care of.
How much was that again?
I think it was in the range of $1,800, does that sound right, Rochelle?
Oh, like
1,500, okay.
Super High Tech.
And it's my understanding those monitors probably wouldn't cost more than $100 or $120 a piece to buy, especially if we bought them ourselves, not at markup. The camera, I'm not sure how much that would cost, but if he's doing labor at $75 an hour, and we're buying monitors in the low hundreds, and the camera, I imagine the camera won't cost more than $300 or $400 at the high end, we're probably giving ourselves some room on how much it's gonna cost, and, it's tough to put a dollar amount on the security that we're getting in exchange for this, I get that.
But there is a shortage of some of that equipment and a backlog of orders. I know people that have been back ordering now for 6 months waiting for some of that stuff.
And that's something I'm sure he could speak to, because I imagine he buys those things all the time in his job, and could explain that to us. What we've been getting is I'm not gonna say an excuse, as a reason from Super High Tech is that they themselves have been slow in installing things, and they themselves have projects that are ahead of us. We haven't heard anything from Super High Tech about a shortage of equipment. Nothing's been mentioned in that regard. I'm not saying that's not the case, but it seems like Super High Tech's reason for not getting this done is just that they're busy.
What would our auditor say about this?
Auditor would say if you did your due diligence and determined that was best, and if you thought you could get out of the contract, then you could proceed.
And what's the dollar limit for working with family members?
Yeah.
6,000 now.
6,000 now?
Okay. That's what I was kinda curious about.
I think you make a reasonable case to look at other options and consider getting out of that contract. I would like to mention that I received an email from Trevor Duckett that said, he's looking for cameras, I sell cameras. I'm not sure where he heard it from or why, but if we're gonna consider others, I want to at least see if people offer the same services and what that would look like, and then do the comparison.
Who was that, Jason?
It was Trevor Duckett.
Lives
here, it was a quick, he said, county is looking for cameras, I install cameras and would like to be in on that discussion with the county. So if we open it up, I just want him to be reached out to and an option as well. I would agree with that. I would support that.
Yeah, let's do it, absolutely. I think that's the best process to give everybody a chance at it. It doesn't have to be formal sealed bids or anything like we're building a road, but I think everybody should have a chance at it. And, the more the merrier, the better chance we have of getting this done. So.
Obviously, one price is certainly within line or less than Super High Tech. I'd be interested in seeing what it would take to cancel that contract and move in a different
just kind of informal direction from the board, you guys would like to explore these options and give you guys some figures and some numbers and some timeframes.
Yeah, if he could reach out to another fellow as well.
Can you send me his info? That'd be great. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Nolan.
Hey, thank you, guys.
9:30, audit findings. You got 20 minutes, Dave.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be bringing it all over. You know, I got my total checks, that's your game. This is the releases.
You'll give me a digital form then, so I can give it to the paper?
Yes, we sure can. The rest of yours, Michelle, I think we got them down last year. You guys here too. Those numbers they sure went up, didn't they, up to $6,000?
Yeah, they did, it went from 1,500 to 6,000. It had been like decades before they had raised it, so.
That's why I was kind of surprised when you said six.
Yes, I know.
They have it last year already?
Yes, yeah. So it's been a full year now. Yeah, you'll see that in the comments here too, that it's the sixth now, so.
You have extra when you bring it.
Oh.
Thank you.
There you go.
Once you have every page read, then you can.
I'll make sure I put all of that in the write-up.
Don't put your readers to sleep. No, they can use this to go to sleep. Let me wait for Heather to get started. Get started. Okay, so first of all, I attached you that loose leaf staple paper. It's just the audit communications. Here it talks about your significant policies, that we didn't have any major problems during the audit, that we implemented a new GASB standard in there. And so it's basically for you as the board, just some significant highlights, audit communications that you can just read through. It's nothing really different than I've given you in the past. There's nothing really any changes. So I'm going to try to concentrate on hitting the highlights and go through at as rapid as a pace as possible. So we're looking at 1920. There is going to be a new GASB implemented in regards to what used to be your agency funds, or now called custodial funds. That was the major change for this past fiscal year. In the prior year that just finished, there isn't going to be any major changes. Then next year, the current fiscal year there's a new major GASB we're going to have to implement, Rochelle, in regards to leases. Basically, all your operating leases, whether it's land lease that you rent out land to somebody, if you have a multi-year contract, basically it has to be brought back to present value and got to treat like they're paying you interest. It's going to be a mess. And the same thing with if you've got even like a copier lease that's multi-year, we have to treat it like it's a capital lease. We have to put it on as a value. We have to show a liability for it. Basically, they want liabilities for everything that you basically have contracted for and you have a multi-year payment on.
Do we have to hire a company to do this then?
No, we'll work with you. We'll get some spreadsheets and it's just gonna basically taking a look at every single equipment lease, every single lease that you have and determining if it meets the factors, and then coming up with an interest rate and converting it back to present value, and, yeah.
So that's for this.
The year you're in right now.
Okay.
Correct. So that is one that we'll have to be talking about and getting some. But for the fiscal year, you just ended, get one calmer year, and then we'll go back to trying to get something new again. So on pages, first of all, we have the index, and we have page 1 and page 2. We give the officials the recognition for the service to the county and to the Public Safety Commission. And we have the first half of the fiscal year and the second half of the fiscal year. On pages 3, 4, and 5, we have our independent audit report. Here is we go on to talk about first section, the report on the statement. We talk about the financial statements we audited. we talked about in the second paragraph, you as the management's responsibility for the actual financial statements. On the third section, we talked about what's our responsibility for determining whether or not we feel they're fairly presented. Page 4, the opinion, that's what's most important. On top of that first section, we say the financial statements referred to are fairly presented. So we feel that you can materially rely on these as accurate. Emphasis on matter paragraph talks about, in note 21, we'll talk about the new fiduciary activities in regards to, and we'll take a look what that means. Other matters required supplementary information. Between the notes and the schedules, you're going to see additional information that technically we do not give an opinion on. We do limited testing on it, not to the point of giving an opinion, so we want to make sure you're aware of that. The supplementary information, which is your schedules at the back there, we do state that those are fairly presented in relation to the other financial statements. And on page 5, we just remind you there's a report on internal controls and compliance. After the schedules, that's important, make sure you do read that as well. On page 6, we talk about the summary of the financials. This is basically a summary of the financial statements. It's meant to be management, a lot of the county officers, management, summary of what you're going to find in the financial statements. So in the very first section is the major highlight of the exhibits and the schedules that are going to follow. Using this audit report on page 6, it talks about the significant components of the audit report. On page 7, we talk about the government-wide financial statements that explains those that are going to follow. Then we talk about on bottom of page 7 the fund financial statements, and that there's 3 types of county funds: governmental, and then on page 8 we talk about proprietary, which is the internal service fund. And then we talk about fiduciary funds, which were called agency funds and now are called custodial funds. Then in the next section, we talk about the Public Safety Commission as a component unit of the county. So we talk about how they're related to the county. It talks about explaining some of the financial main points of the Public Safety Commission. In the first bullet there, it talks basically about exhibits A and B for the Public Safety Commission. The bottom 2 paragraphs on page 8 summarize Schedule 7 for the Public Safety Commission. The top bullet on page 9 talks about Schedule 5 for the Public Safety Commission. And then the last bullet basically talks about the required supplementary information, mainly the budget for the Public Safety Commission. So it's meant to be kind of a summary. The next section talks about the government-wide financial analysis for the county and compares also with public safety. And that is basically a summary of Exhibit A. When we get to that, it's a prior year comparison and analysis of net position, and talks about what makes up your net position. On page 10 then, we have a summary of Exhibit B, which is again the full county-wide, public safety-wide financials, prior year comparison, and analysis of revenues and expenses on a full accrual basis. And then on the top of page 11, the first 3 paragraphs basically go on to kind of give you some financial highlights of what are some of the major changes. Page 11, your individual major fund analysis is a summary of Exhibits C and E in the audit report. It talks about what are some of the most significant changes for the general fund. Then we have the road services fund, secondary road fund on top of page 12. We have your county urban renewal area for the CFE project, kind of the Tyler Avenue Road project, debt service, amended ethanol tip areas P&I debt service fund. Then we have the debt service for the CFE tip area P&I fund. And then we talk about what your other special revenue funds are. We go on to talk about the budgetary highlights on page 13, which can be found in your required supplementary information on pages 62 and 63. It basically kind of talks about what were the amendments for the year, how were those amendments, what were the changes in the amendments, and what was the reasoning for the changes of your 3 different amendments during the fiscal year. Then it goes on to talk about the capital assets, on the bottom of page 13 for both the county and the commission. And that can be further found in note state to the financial statements number 5 later. Then we go on to talk about what some of the major additions were for the county and the public safety during the fiscal year. We go on to talk about the long-term debt for long-term debt issuances. We talk about what was the beginning of the year, what did you take out new, what was paid off, and then it kind of explains in each of the paragraphs what summary of what that debt is. And then it talks about that in note 7, you can find more information, as well as 8 and 9 in regards to IFRS and your OPEB liabilities as well. Page 15 just kind of basically looks at the budget factors for fiscal year 2021, which you just completed. And then it says how you contact financial management if you have any questions in regards to the audit, as a reminder. So these are just kind of a summary of what we're going to look at when we look at the financials. So first of all, on pages 18 and 19, we have the statement of net position. We have this is on our full accrual. This is on a county-wide basis. So the first column is going to have the county as a whole. The second column is going to have the Public Safety Commission as a whole. And basically, as I've explained in other years, doesn't matter how much assets you have. If you have more debt than that, the assets aren't going to do you a lot of good. So what we always concentrate on is what is your net position. And so that is the last section on page 19. So as a county as a whole, the net position, you have $22 million essentially invested in capital assets. You have net position on a full accrual basis that is restricted, and you can see the purposes of what those restrictions are, of $4.6 million. And then you have unrestricted, which can be used for any county legal purpose of right at $900,000, for a total of $27,600,000. On the Public Safety Commission, they have $195 invested in capital assets, and of course, the investment in capital assets is net of depreciation that's already been taken. And then $652 that can be used for any legal purpose for public safety, for a total of $847. Page 20 and 21 shows you how did that fund balance change during the year. This is on a full accrual basis. It is done in a columnar approach. It's meant to show you, first of all, each of the functions. How much did you have for expenses in each of the functions? Then how much did each function generate for charges for services? How much did they get operating grants or restricted interest or contributions? And then how much did they get for capital grants? And so then it basically comes across to say, okay, after your expenses less what it generated, how much did it really cost the taxpayers in general fund revenue, revenues, such as property taxes, unrestricted grants, drainage assessments, various things of that nature. And that's what that next section is, showing that those sort of revenues generate $5.5 million. All but $690,000 was covered through generated each of the functions. So basically, your net position increased by $4.8 million from 22.8 to 27.6. So we had a nice increase this last year. A lot of that is in the form of roads and transportation capital grants. Iowa Department of Transportation, like the farm to market and those sort of funds that they do. And that is added as an addition, and then the value of the road is basically depreciated. So there's a large portion of it is the money that basically came through from the state, from Iowa Department of Transportation. And that's a large reason for that increase this year. Public Safety Commission, you can see there they had just under $1.2 million expenses. They were able to generate about just under $1.4 million. So they increased by $191,000 from $656,000 to $847,000 during the year. So nice increases as the county as a whole. So that's looking at the county as a whole. Then we go to the fund approach, which is a modified accrual basis. This is basically meant to not say what is all our assets in each of the individual funds, but rather what is really available to use in the near term, a year or two down the road at the longest. And so it's more of a current approach to what is the fiscal health of each of the funds. And so first of all, we have your governmental funds. So first we list the assets, the liabilities, deferred inflows, outflows. And again, what's most important for the funds, as well as what we looked at earlier, would be the fund balances. And so, first of all, so we're worried about that bottom section there, the last section on page 23. First, we have the general fund. The general fund has just under, $3.2 million in fund balances. 49, basically right at 50,000 is non-spendable. It's basically an asset that you've already, it's in the form of inventory, or you've already prepaid for an expense. However, you haven't utilized them yet, you haven't got the benefit from them. So therefore, it's a benefit going into the next fiscal year, but it's non-spendable because you've already spent the cash for it. So that's kind of what that section is. Then you have restricted, and you can see you have restricted for general supplemental purposes of $313,000. You have restricted for hotel and motel tax purposes of just under $20,000. For jail improvements, courthouse security, just under $117,000. And then you have just under $524,000 restricted for conservation land acquisition purposes. So that totals $973,973. And then
The hotel motel, that's just the restricted half.
yes, restricted half, correct. We only have the half that is restricted. The other part is not restricted and would be in the unassigned portion. Very good question. So then unassigned, so basically you can use for any legal purposes for the county, and the general basic is just under $2.2 million to come up with that 3.1. Rural services, you have a whopping $40 of prepayment, the rest is reserved for rural services purposes of just under $375,000. Then you have secondary roads, you have just under $968,000 that's in inventory and prepayments already for secondary roads. The rest is it's reserved for secondary road purposes, is right at $1,766,000. For the CFE project, you have $116,000 that I'm sure you spent in this last fiscal year to finish up that project. For the debt service to pay off the amended ethanol tip areas P&I, it had a balance of $13,000 that you utilize to pay off those 2013 bonds, and then you're going to utilize this money to now then start paying off the 2019 series urban renewal bonds that were issued in 1920. Then you have your debt service CFE, which is paying off those 2017 series urban renewal bonds that you took out, and that has $50 in it. And then your non-major, which we'll look at when we look at Schedule 1, that has a negative $37,000, which is mainly going to be your TIP fund that we'll see when we get to Schedule 1. So you basically have $340,000 that is restricted for drainage and other restricted purposes, but then the negative $377 is offsetting that. Anytime there's a deficit position on these TIP funds, we call that unassigned. It's not, even if it's in a restricted fund, it is called unassigned. So that's why you're seeing it unassigned even though it's in restricted funds. So the county as a whole in its governmental funds has just under $6.4 million in fund balances. Then on page 25, I won't bore you with this transition. This is our accountant's tree, where we basically take your Exhibit C on pages 22 and 23, which is your fund basis financials, and we can show you how we get from that financial statement to your Exhibit A, which is the full accrual for the county, and we can show you section by section what are the adjustments that were made to get from the fund basis financials to the full accrual basis. And so if any of you have any questions on that, please contact me. I'll be happy to go over it with you. Page 26 and 27 is where we have your changes during the year. Here's where, by each of those major governmental funds and then the non-major special revenue, we're gonna show what is the revenues for each of the funds, what did you have for expenditures, what were other financing sources and uses such as your transfer. We had the 2019 series urban renewal general obligation bonds that were issued, the premium on those, and then drainage warrants. Stamped drainage warrants are also shown as another financing source. So first of all, we have, so the most important is what is the change during the fiscal year. So we're going to concentrate on those last three numbers on each column on page 27. So we're going to have the change in fund balance, what did it start with, what did it end with. General basic fund, you basically increased it by just under $534,000 from just under $2.7 million to just under $3.2 million. The rural services increased by $75,000 from $300,000 to $375,000. Secondary roads had a lot of, especially bridge projects, different capital projects. That was a lot of the reason for that decrease this past year. That went down by just under $311,000 from balance of just over $3 million to just over $2.7 million. The CFE project, by nature, it's going to go down because it's a capital project fund. You have money come in through loans, transfers, and then you pay it down on your projects. So we would expect to see that drop. And they dropped by $1 million from $1.1 million to that $116 left. And like I said, once the project's done, we should be down to zero. Then you have the debt service for the amended ethanol tip areas, which, like I said, is meant to cover the 2013 bonds that were paid out during the year and the 2019 interest payment, basically. And so that also, because of the fact that you had that money built up and then you paid early down on the 2013 to retire those early, that's the reason for the large drop in that account. It went down by $1.1 million, down to the $13,000. Then you have basically the money that you're borrowing from general basic to help make the payments on the 2017 interest or renewal bonds as they're coming due. So you show what was transferred, what was paid in interest. And then you have, again, your Schedule 2, which is all the non-major ones that we'll take a look at. As a whole, they dropped by about $78,000 from $40,000 to a negative $37,000, and we'll look at that when we look at Schedule 2. So basically, you started the year with just under $8.3 million. It dropped by just under $1.9 million to drop to just under the $6.4 million for the fund balance as a whole. And again, another one of those wonderful reconciliations that accountants love, that basically shows Exhibit E on pages 26 to 27, again, the fund basis, how do you get to the full accrual, which is Exhibit E on pages 20, 21. And again, we list all the adjustments that were made to get from the one point to the other point. Then on page 29, you have your employee group partial self-funding health plan, and this shows what you have available for that plan. You have, again, what's important is the net position restricted for employee health. You have just under $472,000 that you have reserved for your health partial funding health plan. On page 30 shows how did it change during the year. You took in revenues of $1.2 million, you paid out expenses of $926,000, so it went you had operating income of just under $283,000, you had $1,100 in interest, so as a whole it went up from just under $188,000 by just under $284,000 to $471,000 available for the health fund. And then on page 31 is just where we're required to show how did the cash fund, what is actually cash, and how did it change in this fund. So basically it just shows on a cash basis what came in, what was paid out, and it reconciles again to Exhibit H for you. Page 32 and 33, this is a new statement here. We used to just have the statement, the agency funds. Now they're called custodial funds. Basically, in GASB 84, which is explained in a little more detail on page note 21. Basically, what they did is they came up with and said, okay, if the county holds money that it isn't just acting as a flow-through for, so the flow-through would be like your tax collections for the cities, the townships, the schools, the area school, all the money that you basically collect. Those are still treated just like they were before. However, basically the county acts as a tax-paying agent for such as your E911, your emergency management, the assessor. Those are legally separate, but you as a county basically help them pay their bills, collect their money, revenue. Those, they basically say, now are considered a financial position. So basically, now you're going to see there is a financial position. Before, your assets always equaled your liabilities. Now they're just saying, show a fund balance, a net position balance for those that you're basically distributing, taking care of their proceeds, their expenses for them. So that's kind of the change. We'll look at that when we look at schedules 3 and 4. So basically now you have $740,000 in those funds that you help to handle their transactions. And on page 23, it just kind of shows what were the additions and deductions like it did before, but now it shows what's the net position. It shows how we had to restate the beginning position to implement GASB 84, which is the 630, just under 635, to come up with the 740,000. So any questions on that? It's maybe more of a presentation thing than anything else. It's probably more helpful for emergency management, E911, to really get what their fund balance is, so those boards can look at it and say, okay, this is what we have, that's what we really have available. So from that standpoint, I can see where that's advantageous for those particular boards. Page 34, we start the notes, and I just want to hit on the highlights of the notes. So on note 1, we talk about significant accounting policies. We go on in A to talk about the reporting entity. We talk about blended component units, which is your drainage. We talk about how the Public Safety Commission is the next section and how it's related to the county and what financial transactions you have with them. Page 35, we have jointly governed organizations. Those are ones that you're members of or appoint representatives to, and it goes ahead and lists those and what transactions you have with those. Those are like your 911, emergency management, those sort of entities. Then you have a joint venture. We talked about the OCEDC and how basically you and the cities are important to keep for the vitality of that organization and how much you contribute to that. Then on the basis of presentation, again, explains the different financial statements. We talked about the government-wide on page 35 to 36. Then we talk about the different fund structure and how you have, what are your different major funds, what are the different types of funds, how do they get classified for these financials. Page 37, we talk about how do the records flow through each of the financials. It talks when do you recognize revenue and expenses, and talks about all that. Pages 38 to 41 is basically, it talks about if you were looking at your statement of assets, liabilities, deferred inflows, deferred outflows, it basically is a summary of what's in each of those different major account classifications. So you kind of have an idea if you're looking at what, similar to the balance sheet, you kind of have an idea of what's in each of the different categories. And so that goes all the way on to page 41, those different categorizations. Page 41, we talk about budgetary accounting. We talk about that the county and the commission did not exceed any of their budgets this last year, which we'll look at when we look at RSI. Note 2 just talks about your investments that you're eligible to invest in per the code and your policy that you have passed on investments. We talk about what you have invested in ICATE. And then on note 3 is just listing all the inter-fund receivables and payables that you have. You have transactions between funds during the year, and these just show as of June 30, 2020, what was the receivable and payable, and the reasoning for each of those receivables and payables. Note 4 is inter-fund transfers. It shows what were the transfers during the fiscal year and the reasoning. And of course, this isn't gonna tie into your cash basis transfers, this is on the modified accrual. So, again, this is just gonna reflect the transfers that are being treated on a modified accrual basis and not just on a cash basis. So, that you wanna make a note of. Capital assets, again, shows on a full accrual basis, they're only showing up on your full accrual. It's exhibits A and B, it shows, first of all, the first section shows what were the changes for capital assets for the county in 5 different categories, then what was the depreciation for each of those different categories, and then it comes up with the net that ties exhibits A and B, and then we show how much depreciation was spent in each of your functions, and then we do the same thing for the Public Safety Commission. Note 6, due to other governments, basically it lists by fund and description what each fund owes to a different other governmental entity. Again, I don't know what the purpose of that one, but it's required, so we do it. I don't know that you really care what it's for, but okay.
Well, you have to charge us more.
I guess that's it. I shouldn't complain, but I guess, but I guess my worst on that. Then we got long-term liabilities, which is your full accrual only, because long-term liabilities don't show up in your fund statements, because that's more of a current approach. This one should be on a full accrual. This is gonna list each of your debt issuances, plus compensated absences, payable, your net pension liability payable, and the OPEB liability payable. And so that shows you what it started with at the beginning of the year, what it, how it, if it increased, what it decreased, and what's the ending balance on June 30, and then what is expected to then paid in fiscal year 2021. And it's done both on the county as a whole and then the Public Safety Commission. Then on page 46, we basically describe each of those debt obligations. We talk about the 2013 and how it was paid off. We give you an amortization schedule of what principal and interest is expected to be paid under 2017. Then we talk about the 2019 series urban renewal bonds that were issued during fiscal year 1920. We explain what they were issued, what's the purpose, how much did you receive from them, plus the premium and fees, and then what's the payback on those, principal and interest, and how you plan on retiring those. Then you have you're paying off on your voting equipment, which is probably now paid off. So it talks about that, talks about drainage warrants, how you have stamped drainage warrants as you're collecting the drainage assessments. Pages 47 to 451 is all on the pension plan for the county, which you participate in IFRS. So that's the liability that shows up in exhibits A and B. So basically it explains IFRS for the county and the commission and what are all the components of it. You know, on 48, it talks about what your contributions are. It talks about how we come up with the different amounts. It shows deferred inflows and outflows. It even shows you on page 50, what are the assumptions in the actuary, how is IFRS investing their money. So if you're curious how IFRS is investing the money, it gives you that sort of a breakdown. It talks about discount rates and how different discount rates can affect the factors. So that's basically all meant to cover IFRS. Then it basically does the exact same thing on your OPEB. Again, your OPEB, is basically stating because Iowa code requires you to continue to leave employees or anybody who's eligible to participate in the county's health insurance plan. If they want to participate after they retire, you legally have to cover them until they're age 65, I believe, so they can get on Medicare. And basically, they're stating because they feel old, people as we get older, we have a few more health problems, it costs more money, so they're imputing what is costing you extra to maybe have these people on later down the road. And so it's basically coming up with this actuarial value of how many of you will take advantage of that, and it'll cost the county more money even though you're paying for it yourself.
That's increased premiums, right?
Correct.
Pay on, it's all at their own cost.
Yes, at their cost, but they're saying it might now ultimate premiums might be costing you more, so we're gonna figure it out. And so that basically goes on 51 to 52, and talks about those and how we come up with that. Page 52 to 53, we talk about how you do your risk assessment. You participate in ICAP, Iowa Community Assurance Pool. We go on and explain what that pool is on page 53, and then we also talk about how you can buy commercial insurance for your workers' comp coverage in addition to that. Page 53 to 54 talks about your partial self-funded health plan that you have, and talks about the fund that you set up on that, and then that's on page 54, explains that in more detail. Page 54, development agreements. Basically, we have to list, they started this a couple years ago, where we basically have to list each development agreement you have with a business during fiscal year 1920. What did you pay them for that agreement, and then how much have you paid them to date on the agreement? And then, because it's public info, we do have to legally list the name of the businesses, and so it lists each of those. Then tax abatement talks about how there can be different tax abatements and what costs that could be, and then if the cities do it, what kind of costs that could be as well. That's in note 13. Note 14 just talks that you partner with Northwest Iowa Area Solid Waste to handle the county solid waste. It talks about what they set aside for the purpose of their closure and post-closure care costs. On page 56, it talks about how you act as a local government assurance guarantee of $306,000, and it basically explains that as well. So basically, it's just letting the reader know that, hey, you are guaranteeing them and trying to give them some info where they're at on that. Note 15 talks about the mental health fund, which we'll see in schedules 1 and 2, and we're basically required because of the mental health regions to basically show the same information that's on schedules 1 and 2 as a separate footnote. Page 57, you have deficit fund balances. As I stated, each of your deficit fund balances are in TIF funds. Basically, you pay for a TIF project in a TIF area, and now you're waiting for the money to be collected to pay off that debt, and that's what's creating the deficit position. We are required to notice the deficit. Later on we'll see it's a reportable comment, but to be honest, it's the only way you can really do some of these TIF projects, so I get it. Not a major concern on my part, it's just reactive. Commitments just show basically commitments as of June 30 that you had going forward to future fiscal years. Note 18 just talks about the Harris project, the windmills, the TIF litigation that was going on. We give you a history of it. On page 58, it goes on to talk more about it. It does state that on November 4th, 2020, they reversed it and basically said, agreed with the plaintiffs that it was improperly set up, there wasn't a valid joint agreement, and basically said it's being handed back down to the district court, and I think we're still waiting on guidance on what to do with that. Does that sound correct, Rochelle?
Well, that's,
I thought, when someone told me that, it's just an electronic filing and it's done, and I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so we'll have to try to figure that out.
we're so fun, but we have to.
Right, but we really need some guidance at the house, so we'll just have to kind of get a time set up for Rochelle and get on the state auditor and get their blessing that this is how we want you to do it. Because I doubt the court's probably then gonna do that, then I would imagine not. Would be my
That's what I'm currently thinking, I
That's-
think that's how it was gonna go.
That's what I anticipated when I understood when we talked back in November, that they were gonna come and say, this is how it has to be handled. But I suppose they're just saying, no, that's just so,
We
okay.
think solutions can do a program to appropriate all back to the entity
Right,
is what our plan is.
Okay.
Have them do it.
which I would agree. So then it comes down to, do we do it at current rates, do we have to go back to the rates when it's collected?
In my mind, the rate that was collected,
I would
know
almost
that for sure.
think so.
Yeah.
That would be my initial.
But you like something in writing, so that we know that.
Exactly, that's why I think we need to visit with the state auditor, because we're gonna do what we feel is best, and then someone's gonna come in and tell us we know that they're wrong.
Mhm.
So let's just get their blessing beforehand and do it right. county. Now, we're gonna probably wanna try to do that, so we can get the liability set up for the 2021, so we don't have so we're probably gonna wanna visit and try to get that for the next year's audit, so we can get it showing that there's a payable back. It was approved during the fiscal year, and if that's the case, where it's just a filing, we probably wanna get that, so that's something we'll have to probably set up sooner than later.
Okay.
Final ruling wouldn't have been until this last fiscal year, not this fiscal year.
Not the one we're auditing, this one, the one you just finished up. Correct. And that's why it's gonna be important for us to get that liability on for that audit. Yeah, so. Subsequent events just talks about what happened since July 1, 2020 to June 9, 2021. Major talks about estimates on note 20, and then on note 21, it just talks about how we restated it for that new GASB 84 and those fiduciary activities. Then we have required supplementary information on pages 62, 63. This is just your budget for the county. It shows you basically the county actual figures in the first column. Then it takes out what you're not required to budget, which is your drainage districts in the second column, to come up what is the actual for the county compared to the budget. We list what the original budget was in the first column on page 63, what the final amended budget was on page 63, and then how did the actual compare to your final budget. And so that last column is what's most important. Your receipts came in just under 261,000 above what you anticipated. Disbursements came in 1,252,000 below, so you came in just over 1.3 million better than anticipated. Your other financing sources came in $9,000 better, which is basically the premiums on those urban renewal bonds. And so you can see that you came in basically 1.4 million as a total compared to what your ending fund balance that you had budgeted was. And so none of the functions were exceeded, and that's really what we're also looking at as an auditor. So everything was complied with as far as the budget. 64 is another one of our wonderful reconciliations, where we reconcile the first column, the cash-based budget on 62, 63, to what your modified accrual basis was on pages 26, 27, or Exhibit E, and it shows the adjustments that were made to get between the two. Then page 65 gives you the Public Safety Commission's budget to actual. Again, they did not amend their budget, so it has the actual, what their original adopted budget was, since there was no amendment, and then how did they come in? They came in $26,000 above in receipts. Their disbursements were $91,000 below, so they came in just over $117,000 better than they budgeted for, and their ending balance came in just under $144,000 better. And again, it shows the reconciliation for the Public Safety Commission. Page 66 just explains the budgetary process to anybody who wants to understand it. Page 67, basically, this shows the last 6 years summary statistics for the county, and this is from your IFRS footnote, note number 8. So it's stuff we have to disclose in regards to IFRS, and again, that's summaries from note 8, footnote 8. And then on the next page, 68, we do the exact same thing for IFRS for the Public Safety Commission. Then we go on page 69 and 70 for the county and then public safety. We show what did you contribute for the last 10 years for IFRS, and what was the county's payroll and what percentage you complete done for each of those for the county and the public safety. Then on page 71, we go on to list the different major functions that were used for IFRS in note 8 as well. Then on page 72, we basically give you a summary of note 9 on your OPEB, those future health benefits summary. And we do that on the county on page 72, and we do that for the Public Safety Commission on page 73. And that gives you the last 3 years comparison. Then we get into your supplementary information, which we do give an opinion on. This is basically the summary on page 76, 77. We'll tie to the second to the last column that we talked about on Exhibit C. So it basically gives you all the other smaller funds that aren't considered major funds, and it basically gives you the fund balance, gives you all the assets, liabilities, and what's the fund balance for each of those. Then also, you want to make a note on that the Harris project, the windmills tip, is the one we're talking about, that $162,000, is that note 18 we just got done discussing, and so that's what we'll have to reallocate. And then on page 78 and 79 lists how did it change during the year, each of those funds, and that's what I want to quickly, just briefly talk on. Exhibit E, so that's tied to page 26 and 27, again, the second to the last column. So the bottom three things are what's most important. You have your revenues, expenses, transfers in, drainage warrants, how did each fund. So first column is mental health, went up by $2,100 from just under 14 to 16. Recorder service management went down by about $1,500. Unified law tax levy, which is passed through, went up by $2,200. Attorney incentive fund went up by $1,700. Sheriff's asset forfeiture went up by $2,000. The amended TIP ethanol, basically area, that one was a zero at the end of the year. Then you have your Senex Quat TIP area. That basically shows that is at was at 189, but you're making collections now, so you're paying that down. That's basically what is owed to mainly the secondary roads fund, and that's basically that liability. Then you have the windmills Ocheaton tip, and that's the $3,000 that you technically owe to the general basic fund yet. Otherwise it was in and out. Then you have the Harris, no activity like we talked about. The CFE tip area, and that's basically showing the transfers out on that. That's going to be what you're going to be collecting. You're probably collecting now from the CFE, and so that's what that's that deficit, and you'll collect that money, and then you'll pay back the loans you have. The drainage districts went down by about $16,000 from 94 to 78, and then your REAP went down by about $5,000. So the majority of the changes were in like the CFE tip area. Otherwise, they were pretty well, about a break even. So again, that shows you how it changed as a whole. Then on page 80 and 81, really there, I just want to point out, again, these are the funds you're holding money for. You can see, second column, emergency management is where we had to implement that new policy, E911 surcharge, the county assessor, and the only other one was the flex spending. Technically, Sharon handles that for the county, and it's basically, you take the money in on the flex, and then she pays it back out. But since people have to make claims, it's like similar, so we have to treat it like the accessory surcharge and emergency management. So those are the ones that implemented. Everything else is just an in and out like before. And then on page 82, 83, again, shows you what was the changes for each of those during the year, and then what did we start with each fiscal year. Talked about that note 21 we talked about, and where did it end up. And again, like I said, it's probably most helpful for emergency management board, E911 board, and the county assessors boards to kind of have an idea. Page 84, we talked about the Public Safety Commission, and it basically gives you what's assets, liabilities. It had just under $811,000. 32,000 of it was deemed to be non-spendable in prepayments, and then the rest is $778,000 was available. Then 85, we have the wonderful reconciliation again. Your Schedule 5 tier exhibit A. Page 86, it lists the revenues and expenditures that you had during the year for the Public Safety Commission. How it increased by just under $196,000, and it went from $614,000 to just under $811,000. And again, we reconciled Schedule 7 to Exhibit B. You guys have reconciliation. On page 88, we have the last 10 years, and this would be a nice little tool for you to kind of just use. It shows revenues for each of the governmental funds, but for the county, for each of the last 10 years, and the expenditures for each of the county, governmental funds as a whole for the last 10 years. So it's basically meant to give you a good, you're gonna see from that analysis that except for years 2019 and 14, you're gonna see your revenues and expenditures are all equally close to each other in each of those years, except for those 3 years where the expenditures exceeded more, and me going back and taking a look at it, it was because you had projects during their years, like for instance, the Tyler Avenue Road project is the most recent one, that's causing a lot of that change, or, you know, there was large capital projects in like in roads and transportation. So, for the most part, your revenues are balancing your expenditures, except for when there's large capital projects. Then Schedule 10 shows the same thing for the Public Safety Commission. This one I found to be of interest. If you look, the first, from 2011 to 2015, every year the expenditures in Public Safety Commission exceeded what they took in revenue. And then if we look at from 2016 to 2020, every single year the revenues exceeded your expenditures by a decent margin. So a little trend there. So just to kind of give you an idea where the balance was way dipping and now it's being built back up again. So page 91, we talked about the internal controls. We go to 92, 93. Here's where we have that report we mentioned earlier. This is on internal controls and compliance. Here we talk about that later in the findings, we'll talk about internal controls, we'll talk about compliance issues. The thing we want to make a note here is we do not give you it's not an audit of internal controls, it's not an audit of compliance. We do spot testing. If we note something we think could be of value, we put it in the findings, or if we note a compliance issue we think could be tweaked, we put that in there, but it's not an audit. We're not giving an opinion on this. And it's really meant for you as a board to kind of utilize, so that's the purpose of it. Pages 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102 to 103 are all your internal control comments. Everyone is similar to what we've had in the last couple of years. You are working on tweaking some of them, and appreciate that, but they are similar, so I don't want to waste your time because we've gone over them in other years. Yeah, if you look back the last couple of years, you're going to see the same comments, just maybe worded slightly different. So internal controls, just keep working on those. So really, the compliance ones are the ones I just want to kind of mention on page 104. These are, some of these are, there is some compliance that needs to be tweaked. Some of them we just have to legally note. Certified budget, we didn't note you didn't exceed your budget. You were perfectly fine on that. We noticed on the last budget amendment, the hearing one versus the actual adopted was slightly different. I think there was a slight glitch. What was in the paper was there was a line missing, somehow didn't print out.
Oh, yeah, the software.
Yeah, the software glitch, basically. So we just noted that, you know, nothing serious. You as a board approved it. It wasn't anything significant. We're not worried, but we do have to note. So that was a software glitch. Expenditures, again, we do need to notice some credit card charges, employee reimbursements with just an invoice, with a credit card slip and not an invoice. Some few finance charges, sales tax, we wanted to try to tweak those. Travel, we didn't notice any travel for employees of their spouses or family members, but again, when you only got it in a credit card slip, it could be happening and we're not seeing it, so we do want to make that note. Business transactions, as we discussed earlier, it is 6,000 now, so anything under 6,000, you do not have to enter through bid. The only two that exceeded that were the Sibley Sheet Metal for $8,300 and Mega Ink for $89,000. So you want to do that through competitive bidding or the vendor listing that you've done in the past. Somewhere you want to basically make everybody feel they're given an opportunity to bid if you go over that 6,000 for a particular service. A new one on 20-5, restricted donor activity. We did not notice that there was any restricted donor activity. So basically what they want us to be checking for, and we tried this, is if any of you officials or anybody everybody in the county here is using county resources to get gifts or receive gifts, or even like utilizing it to get Kiwanis money, basically utilizing their position or county resources to gain a benefit. And we did not notice anything of that. So if afterwards someone wants to disclose something to me that we need to be aware of, please feel free to. It's something that we'll have to be checking going forward. So if you do have anything, please let me know, especially going forward, so we can kind of be looking into that if you have any concerns on that. So that is a new code section that they implemented this last year. Bond coverage, you're within bond coverage. The minutes, I know Rochelle's getting it to them timely, but it seems like one of the papers isn't always timely getting it in their newspaper, which I feel for you, Rochelle, I know you're trying.
So since we got two, as long as it makes them in one, are we good?
Technically, it's supposed to be in both. So technically, we have to note it, and I think the question is, you posted on the website too, so.
Give it a week, but I always have the paper within the week.
I know you do.
It's supposed to be printed within a week of the meeting?
It's like, is it like 20 days or something of the meeting, and there's like a time frame, and the one paper isn't so good about doing that.
And since we're required to use two papers by code, how is that our
It's really not.
issue?
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying.
I do within a week. I print them, I give them to you guys to review it, and then within a week of the board meeting. Some of it, our problem was too, that our meetings were on Friday, and that's their publication date is Friday.
Yeah.
Deadline in one paper, the other paper probably is not, but that could be part
That
of
could
the
be
problem
part.
as well.
So we'll look into it for this year, and maybe, because we looked and no one gave us an answer from the state, if you put it on the website, does that override it? And nowadays, I would think it should, because let's be honest, most people.
It does. I have a public information board about one of my other
You did,
boards.
okay.
And it still has to be posted where we have our meetings.
Okay.
And the minutes the same way, wherever we usually stick them.
Okay.
That's where they gotta be, unless the state wants to change code to allow us to, use said website as the official spot to drop it. That's what we're stuck with.
Okay, so that's probably why they didn't get back to me, because they probably thought, well, no.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate knowing that.
You do have it in, as soon as I send it papers, I also send it, and it's posted on the website.
Right. So again, I know you're doing it, I just wanted to make sure, we just have to note that. We did notice one check where it was accidentally missed out of the minutes, didn't look anything, just got omitted once. And then the review board didn't approve their prior minutes during one of their meetings. So again, they want to just do that, I want to mention that to them. Deposit investment, you followed the code except for, Becky went over the depository resolution at Sibley State, Melvin State, and US Bank. So we want to either increase those, or she just wants to make sure she watches that she's trying to keep it under the approved resolution. REAP was in accordance with code. Your annual urban renewal reports you file with the state were all complied with. Interfund loan, as we mentioned before, you're borrowing money from general basic to that CFE, in essence for that urban renewal area till they collect money. We just noted that it wasn't technically formally approved by the resolution. We had talked about that. And I think maybe now you are, maybe now you don't have to do that anymore, probably.
So we're just collecting on this fiscal year, so we will pay back starting this fiscal year.
You'll start the basic back. So did you have to borrow money this last year from them, general basic to make? No. Perfect, okay. So that's one where, you're doing it, it's just a matter of technically following the code. TIF reporting, we just worked with the gals in getting the TIF forms all corrected, and they were extremely complex, especially with that urban renewal 13. So I understand there, we got it right. Flex spending plan, we just noted that someone had too much withheld, and then they paid it back, but then, so they really got a pre-tax benefit when they paid it back, they didn't have to pay taxes on that. So we just have to note that it's $360, but we have to note it. financial condition that we already talked about with those TIF funds that are a deficit, again, not a major concern, we do have to note it. Then that, your outstanding obligations disclosure report, that is done once a year, so at June 30th list, and all the required debt was on there, it's just that he accidentally put the amount, the net proceeds you received, which is more than the actual debt outstanding, so the amount wasn't just actually correct on that. It was disclosed, it just was disclosing the wrong amount. So, we noted that, and then the treasurer's annual report, we did notice there was a solutions, was combining some of the funds, and legally, on the treasurer's annual report, each individual fund has to be listed separately. The windmill tip for Harris and the amended ethanol tip for JRJ were somehow put with general basic on that report, and that was basically needed to be just corrected with solutions. So, questions for me? I went over by 5 minutes.
Well, it's more than 5.
Sorry.
With the payroll stuff, can that just be all software related to keep from paying excess comp time and all the rest of that stuff?
I think we'll have to work with solutions to see if there's ways we can get that figured out.
Because a lot of this bookkeeping stuff seems like software stuff that wouldn't allow you to do these entries if they weren't correct.
A lot of the comp time, though, is they don't use really, they're just using more like Excel spreadsheets to track it. I don't know if the solutions have a program where you could enter it directly in. Could they utilize it down there or not?
We have to enter it in.
Then you have to enter it all.
And we do. A lot of it. The sheriff's office one that gets figured out comp time.
Right.
So are they not? How? You know, the only entity that gets paid off.
I don't know how we end up with excess comp time if the contract doesn't allow it.
Or is it because they have more comp time on the books and what like union contract says?
They'll sometimes carry over more than a state and they don't lose it, and then they'll let them use it back down so they don't lose it type of concept occasionally.
The contract says you can only carry over X.
And then we'll see where they're allowed to carry over more than that and they don't lose it type of thing like the contract states.
So we need to pay closer attention to the contract and how much everybody's carrying over, basically.
Correct.
Is that the sheriff's job or is that the auditor's job?
I would say technically that's probably really who's ever handled the sheriff's job, you know, they.
They're the ones who submit the claims to us.
Right, they really are, should be in charge of handling that.
And was that excess vacation, was that also over there or was that over here?
I'd have to honestly double check on that. I'm thinking it was over there. I don't believe it was here. I do not believe so. But I can look and let Rochelle know for sure. Should I do that, Rochelle?
Sure.
Yeah, then you know for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do that.
And the handbook allows us to approve additional vacation time, but it takes a
But,
act through that.
yes, exactly, so as an auditor, then we
I'm
want
not
to.
sure about the union contract.
Right, so then as the auditor, we want to see that the board was aware of it and they approved the extra carryover, correct? Other questions? Very good questions.
What was the one where we had, is that for next year that we have to change around our donating of money?
Oh, yes,
That,
yes, the nonprofit
Yeah.
situation.
that,
That is, everybody's kind of pulling their hair out on that. That is something that's been on the books for a long time, the state just hasn't enforced it, and I don't know, with the change in auditors or something, now it's a higher priority. But they're basically saying, well, yeah, we knew, but now we're demanding you start enforcing it.
They've done audits and not cited it.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, I look back in their audits, they've never once said it either.
I did get a contract from Sioux County.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay,
They
good.
get a template, and I've had Nolan look at it, and I'm getting ready to, the board just probably approve it.
Yes, I would say absolutely.
They just have to approve just the template, they don't have to approve each entity's one before I send it out, or how do you think I should do that?
They probably should approve each one.
Okay.
I would say you should approve each contract, yeah, because, so basically, they want each nonprofit to basically be accountable to you, that you say, in order for us to give you X, you have to prove how many people did you serve, and what its goals, objectives did you accomplish. They want to basically make it more like the true vendor than just a donation and you accomplish what you can and great. They basically want it more like a vendor that you pay for services.
So they want like a minimum criteria type kind of thing?
Pretty much,
Yeah,
yes.
I think the contract from Sioux County is the 5-page contract that they have, and then.
Was that for a particular entity, or is that,
All of them.
they're just gonna utilize it for all of them?
Yes, and then there's a back page that entity has to fill out what services they are providing to the county.
Okay. With the money that you gave?
Yes. So before I send it out, I should have the board approve each one of those contracts, and then they approve it, and I send it out, and, okay?
You know, if it's gonna be all the same contracts, approve it all at once, and technically,
Yeah.
say, here's 5 contracts, we'll approve it.
Right.
You know, if especially if it is the same word.
Yeah.
Then I think you could
Except for the,
utilize that,
yeah.
so.
I mean, the state auditor said it should be a simple contract, and then it's just like 5 pages, so.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's
That's
simple.
probably, I was gonna say, I think that's simple. If it is a 25 page, yeah, I think that is their simple.
But Nolan has reviewed it, he said
Yeah,
that
and
would,
if he approved it,
he said that would work for our county.
perfect.
So I
That's
will
what
have
my,
them approve
as
it.
an auditor, that's what I wanna hear. That Nolan said, yes, he agrees, and then, as an auditor, then I like to hear that.
Yeah, that's, I have an email stating that,
Okay, perfect.
change it, through the court bill.
Anybody else got any questions for Dave?
Thank you. Thank you, guys, appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, Rochelle.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get back to your discuss the next two items.
Most people leave when I come.
I'm not gonna get done with this meeting, this one's gonna have to
I
be
know, right?
suspended.
I can never really, ever, the right time.
So, I bet we can probably squeeze Becky in
Vipers
for,
have changed the
Yeah,
way.
we'll get her finished.
So they, you know, and of course, that includes like some of the law enforcement and stuff, so that's gonna change those rates. That's the reason why, because they have increased the county share in some of those. There's the regular, and then there's the protective, and then there's the law enforcement. And so, that's why, because they've upped the rate.
so every damn raise, but hey. I should have hit this up this morning. I need another round, but it's just like, no. Quite a need some water.
Yeah.
Like all the rains and everyone else has kind of gotten around me, like our whole area down there.
Well, we haven't, we caught a couple for, since.
I've got any of these ones.
I knew.
Yeah, like, what was it 1,500?
Yeah, north of the class,
Go around.
north of the, a couple homes, and they caught that. They were doing those.
I went to Des Moines on Saturday, and it rained all the damn way down there. It rained so hard, I understand.
Becky,
You couldn't keep up. Becky said, what?
she's coming.
Well, Leroy, you're gonna get out all sorts of meeting time today.
Yeah. I was leaving.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about leaving because of all this drainage.
You leave all
Yes, I got
over.
it straight.
I was thinking the same thing.
I said I was leaving before,
You got first dibs, huh?
Yeah.
Trying to get those before.
Okay. Do we need to wait for Mike, or?
Just so the,
I do, yeah, I do.
Jackie, I'm just gonna let you start explaining what we need to discuss.
Well, this gentleman called me and he had fallen and broke his arm or something, so he was then living with his daughter in Sioux Falls. And he had made the payment, it was all posted, and then he asked if we could waive the penalty and interest on it. I said, no. But then he talked to a few supervisors and was upset, and Dickinson County refunded it for him.
Was it COVID related?
No, it's just this last,
Water conservation.
is that where she is?
Yeah.
So what is the recommendation from the treasurer?
I said I would not void it. And the.
Becky and I talked to them, and you called
I called
Dickinson
Dickinson
County and
County.
asked them how they did it, and she said they went to the supervisor.
Yeah, back to the supervisor.
Their treasurer recommended not waiving it as well, and the supervisors did.
Well, I guess she didn't really say that, she just says when something like this comes up, she just brings it to the supervisor to debate it, or debate it. Refund it.
All right, who wants to lead the debate today?
Well, the only thing I would say is, he called me, I think he called Mike. He is 90 years old, been a citizen of Osceola County his whole life. Never probably been late, has he, Becky, in the past?
Thinking of that.
I don't wanna make a habit of that, I don't know if we do it, if that starts. I haven't. I have mixed feelings about it, but,
Yeah, I guess if you've driven for 80 years and got your first speeding ticket, it shouldn't be waived because you haven't been caught speeding before, but.
They're still gonna give it to you. I got experience.
I'll make the motion to waive it.
I'll support that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now remember, when I'm late with mine next time,
I've paid a couple times, but I just never got.
I have two.
So, for the tax, so, double, 200, or something like that.
I really,
Yeah.
I'll be
One
honest,
was a
I'm
house.
struggling with it.
Just buy one of the house, or
Maybe two.
land.
now, if it's COVID related, I'll give you that one.
Right.
Nobody talked to me, so I don't know.
I've had my ear chewed off.
Well, are you at the UV took?
Oh, that one, oh. Yeah.
What else we got?
Nothing we can squeeze in before, oh wait.
Or the warrants.
What about cancel warrants over 1 year old?
Yeah.
What do you got for that?
Yeah, there's just warrants enough, yeah. There's one over 1 year that shall be canceled and put back into the, unclaimed.
We made out, that haven't been
That haven't
damaged.
been touched.
Do we have a policy on that?
Yeah, it's cool. Anything over a year.
The warrants.
Then it's just not automatic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shall. It's just informing you.
We don't need to act on it, that's informational item.
I think we always have, so just having the minutes that we did, and then we're all in compliance.
Is it right?
You can see a second.
I'll second, or Jerry, all those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Perfect, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. So I guess I would entertain a motion to suspend the board meeting, so we can start drainage. All those in favor of suspending this meeting to start our drainage district meetings? All those opposed, same sign.
Did I have to do that?
Motion carries.
We can continue work doing drainage.
I know. They should have a copy of that, unless they changed it.
Nope, nothing's
Are we
changed.
just identifying them?
5 minutes.
I know, Paul.
Yes, I won't pass any more on to you. Yeah, we got this.
Dickinson County then?
Alright, hold up. Roll call. Mr. Shelby.
Aye.
Mr. Van Hook. Mr. DeVore. Mr. Allen.
Alright.
Any additions or subtractions to today's agenda for the drainage district? What is this one?
Make motion to approve the agenda.
I'll support that.
All those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Any corrections to the June 22nd, 2021 minutes?
Motion to accept those minutes.
Second that, all those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're up to consider engineer's recommendation on reclassification.
Okay, I gotta call Dickinson County. This is your meeting.
The TV
It says Zoom.
I know.
No, it's just verbal.
I would wait for Zoom.
It was, and then Paul said we don't need it. Okay. I'm good with that.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting passcode followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 2 participants in the meeting. You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing *6. You are unmuted.
Good morning, can you hear us?
We sure can.
Awesome.
Do I take it away, or any motions need to be made to start?
We already started.
Okay. We'll get into this. Welcome, Dickinson County. Today we're going over, just some of the findings that we found, in regard to reclassification, of Joint Drainage District 3, at the previous meeting on, June 22nd. It was presented that, Osceola and Dickinson County, were both found to be using, one, schedule for, evaluation of assessments on Joint Drainage District, 3 through the main open ditch schedule. However, at the time, it was also noted that Osceola County did appear to have a few other lateral tile schedules, that we did not know where they came from. Well, upon additional research after the meeting, it was found that the district had been reclassified in 1985 with minutes found from February 12th, 1986, confirming that the board had approved the reclassification of lands of JDE3 and the schedules associated with the 1985 Commissioner's Report. So, that being said, this district schedule is not the original schedule, but rather one that was developed in 1985 by WHKS Engineering Company of Mason City, Iowa. So from there, we dove into kind of what we had found within their reclassification schedule to see if that schedule would be equitable based upon our current standards and what processes we had gone through, or WHKS had gone through at the time for review of their engineer's report, or commissioner's report for reclassification. So we found that there was 75 schedules total developed for the main and including the main open ditch, the branch 152 open ditch, and then 73 branch tile facilities. Review of the schedules found that 3 factors were used to develop the assessment, being the factors being land classification, benefited acres, and proximity to the ditch.
those three factors are, pretty common for, reclassifications that were done in the 1980s, time period. However, it should be noted that there is the absence of one very common factor, which is the use factor, which basically accounts for where a parcel's runoff is draining into a facility. So, you would see inequity, and there's an example, in the write-up here that I show you, based upon where, land's waters are draining into the facility. So, for example, the southeast, southwest of section 16 and the southwest, southeast of section 7, both have, similar, properties. We can see that both are 39 acres. We're fairly close on land classification and proximity right there. And our points that we're developing for the assessed units are fairly similar. Well, one thing, that is different between these two parcels that we aren't seeing is that the section 16 parcel is draining and using very little of the open ditch facility, whereas the section 7 is using, about, 80% of the facility. So using significantly more and paying a small portion more only based upon the land classification value. And, there's no definite answer of what land classification is, indicated in WHKS's report, but we would assume this, would be something, possibly visual, where they graded the land, between, the different acres within a parcel as having, 100%. That'd be very similar to like a wetness factor. So, in addition to not, having that usage factor, it was also found that, the reclassification in 1985 did not follow, Iowa Code Chapter 468-39, which, states the following: the lands receiving the greatest benefit shall be marked on a scale of 100, and those benefited in a less degree with such percentage of 100 as the benefits received bear in portion thereto. So, simple applied version of that would be when reclassifying, you're supposed to identify the parcel which receives the most benefit, from the facility being reclassified, and then all of the other parcels within, that schedule are then compared to that district, or to that parcel. So your most benefited parcel would be 100%, and then say you identify a parcel that has 50% of the benefit, well then that percentage would be considered 50%. So, out of those two, so after review of the assessment schedules, both Osceola and, Dickinson County are both using the main open ditch schedule that was developed as part of this 1985 reclassification. And from a few spot checks, as in terms of parcel splits, that schedule has been, maintained. However, the problem that we're running into here with the 85 schedule is it is fairly inequitable since it isn't using the use. It didn't follow code in regards to the chapter 468, section 39, and then the big one in terms of entry now into the system is that the 1985 reclassification doesn't list any pins with the schedule that was developed. So any entry would by either one of the Dickinson or Osceola County auditors would require to go through each one of the schedules individually, associate a pin with the benefited acres, and then moving forward, you'd have to go back to 1985 and look at any parcel splits which may have occurred within those individual branch schedules.
So the only schedule that's been entered into the system is the main open ditch
for both counties. Correct. And then Osceola has a few, partially mirrored schedules, but we don't know, how well those have been maintained necessarily. So right now, our recommendation, is still to continue, with the preliminary engineer's report of lateral 152 and lateral 152-178, and set up an informational meeting with landowners. At that informational meeting, we will review the proposed improvements and need for reclassification with the landowners. And then after receiving, input from landowners, determine if the improvement will be pursued in regard to lateral 152 especially, and then lateral 152-178, we kind of covered, at the previous meeting that, the petitioner, holds enough land that it can't really be stopped, but we still need to proceed through, the hearing process for that. And then if the landowners at that meeting, do wish, we would continue with pre-construction, reclassification. I guess I'll open it up to the board, for questions.
I don't think anyone here in Dickinson County has any questions. It seems pretty straightforward that, a mistake was made or an absence of doing a proper job, and your recommendations seem to be fine.
Okay, Osceola County, any questions?
Well, we don't have a choice, do we? No.
No, I guess what we're really presenting here to you today is that we wanted to inform, both boards that this 85, schedule did exist because there was a change in circumstance, from the previous meeting. So, we couldn't really proceed without informing the boards. So we're just looking for your approval to continue.
I'd make a motion, or somebody make a motion.
I'll make a motion to proceed. Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion should be by the joint board together, so you should have.
They can do it all.
Is there really a need for a motion, because the recommendation is to continue with the previous motion, basically, we were just provided information that wasn't available at the time. But
You're probably right.
There was an official motion the last time for reclassification.
We approve ISG to complete a preliminary engineer's report for an informational meeting with landowners on those branches, so.
Yeah.
It looks to me like.
Do we have a date set in mind for the preliminary engineering report meeting?
We had July 27th, but I don't know if that's too short a notice, or 2 weeks, or?
Yeah, we'd probably recommend bumping it back with, reclassification.
Because we're gonna want to file with both boards, the preliminary report. We're probably in the neighborhood of 75% complete with the preliminary report, and we should file that with the board and then set hearing. The hearing does not have to be out 40 days from that filing. We just have to give 20-day notice. Actually, this is just gonna be information.
Yeah, this is
what we can do. We can just, whatever is reasonable for getting mailed notice out. So.
Do we have an updated list of the landowners for like a reclassification report at all, like to make sure we have all the landowners current?
We could get a list generated, for mailing for notice.
Okay.
Like August 17th.
We meet every other week, so we are looking at the second Tuesday of August, after our 27th meeting, 27th.
August 10th, whatever.
You're looking at 64, 65 potentially going to that.
Or, yeah, it would be 64, 65 would also be that day on the Osceola's board agenda.
Another drainage meeting.
And
And then we have to have it in a neutral spot, since it's both counties, or how does that work?
Well, if you're having informational, it should be in a given, location where landowners from.
Kind of like a joint
County.
park.
We did it in Harris last time.
I don't remember which meeting we had, but for like DD 61, because we were the main, we were the lead county, everybody came to our courthouse. Everybody came to our boardroom. So I don't know if you would wanna do something like that for Osceola County.
Not our boardroom.
Like joint one, we.
Well, ours is getting updated, after our today's meeting, and it'll be done by the 27th. I mean, I'm assuming our board would be more than welcome to have you guys, if you would wanna come on August 10th.
I'm kind of thinking maybe in Harris.
Would that be a regular board meeting?
I've never been there.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have it after
Set
the
up
board
like 3 in
meeting.
the afternoon or something?
Yeah, you could, 65, you need 64, 65.
We did the joint one in Lake Park the last time we met on that one, so this one's over that jump, we can do it in Harris.
I'd say Harris.
The community room in Lake Park's always nice too with Marine. That's where we do our election. That's got a pretty big space in the community building. Or the school there to the north.
Harris does too.
They do it in Harris.
Did you say you had something on August 10th with 64 and 65?
Yes, Harris would be a good spot for.
We could do the
65
whole
too.
thing in Harris.
Because that's right next to town, so it'd be easier than for those landowners that are, would be very Harris anyway, so
Like
if we set it up.
one and
I got you.
3 then or something, or I don't know how long it would take, but.
Yeah, 1 and 3 would probably be a good time for them, so it doesn't matter which way we go, whether it's JD 3 first or 64, 65, it's up to the board, so.
64, 65 will be an actual, formal notice. So whatever time we set for that, we should be trying to hold to.
I'll be gone the 10th too.
Well, aren't you guys lucky?
So you'd be gone for 64, 65 anyway.
Yep.
And there's others?
Possibility, we could probably just do our whole board meeting in Harris that day. Then have one meeting and get it all done.
Then your next meeting is 2 weeks later too.
Yeah, 24th.
Whatever. But just keep this moving, we'll do it on the 10th.
Coming back the 10th, so later in that week, we could schedule a different day.
The 10th works for Dickinson, we'll do it on the 10th. We got 3, we're good to go.
Does the 10th work for you guys in Dickinson?
Yeah, well, what about you guys? So are you looking for an afternoon appointment? A meeting?
Yeah, it'd be like 1 o'clock or something like that.
1:30?
Tell Bill we can't do that.
We gotta get our lunch.
Oh, okay.
Getting, all the billing list put together.
Yeah, we can get that one together.
Okay.
1:30.
August 10th at 1:30 in Harris Civic Center.
Tell Bill we'll all cave to him.
Hey, I gotta have my afternoon nap here. What's the date?
The August 10th at 1:30 at the Harris City Center?
Yep. Or community building, whatever you would call it.
What's it called?
It's right across from both, it's right on Main Street. It's hooked up to the, fire station.
Right, for posting, you need to.
Yeah.
What do they call it?
I think it's the Harris Civic, I
Center?
think it's the Harris Civic Center, but I will double check and let you know for sure. We hold our, we have our polling place for that. I'll double check with you and let you know.
I can look in that book too.
Okay.
How is that facility in regard to, would there be any kind of a screen, projector screen or anything like that?
You would have to bring it, it's not there.
Okay.
Is that
Wall or something. If there's a wall, you got.
There is a good wall?
Yeah.
Okay.
a lot of windows on there, I think are, yeah, probably, okay. And then
So do you want a motion to move along with this, and we've got a motion and a second here at Osceola, so how does everybody vote in Dickinson?
Include the date and time and
Including
location.
the date, time, and location for Harris at 1:30 on August 10th. So how votes Dickinson?
How do you vote, Bill?
Say, our secretary would like to know who moved and seconded in Osceola.
Gary Helmers.
Sherry Holmers made the motion and Mike Schulte made the second.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone here wish to make a motion? No. Yes, the vote. Well, let's roll call it. Kim?
Kim Wilkerson, aye.
Steve? Steve Clark, aye. Tim?
Steve Burchell, aye.
Jeff? Jeff B. aye. Bill Leopold, aye.
And we're all ayes, so we're good to go. Motion carries.
Is that, I think that wraps up, everything that we had to say, so.
Give me a motion for adjournment for somebody.
So moved.
Give them the, motion and second there, Rochelle.
We're adjourning the meeting, so Jerry Helmers and Leroy DeBoer seconds the motion to adjourn.
Dickinson.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
You on the town at the Harris Wilson Center?
Yeah, I'll let you know the exact name, and I think, I'll let you know for sure the exact name. I'll let Jordan.
Have a good summer.
Thank you too.
All right, we're adjourned out of that one, so we've got. Okay. We got 5 minutes. And we can.
I'm going to reopen our
Other meetings. I'll second that, all those in favor of resuming the, Board of Supervisors meeting? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Resolution number 1, 2122, approving amended development agreement with Green and Yellow.
Did second one here for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did. Or she asked if we had any questions for her. Do you have
Do
any
we have any
questions, Jason, or?
I have no.
Can you Stephanie, I don't know her extension. Thank you, bye.
Under B on page 2, I would think that it should read $122,890.90. The total amount is paid from fee. 122,890.09.
and stuff, I think it's.
I think this reflects what I had hoped to see, and I would like to see it happen. I'll make the motion to approve resolution 1.
With the change in dollar amount.
Inserting that number, yeah. It's no different than what the parentheses say. $110,000 minus the aggregate payments already paid and $4,000 for legal expenses.
Support that.
Mr. Randall?
Aye.
Mr. Shelby?
Aye.
Mr. Helmers? Aye. Mr. York? And I vote aye. Motion carries.
Thanks
Oh,
for
really?
bringing this up.
Thanks for coming all the way up.
No, that's
And
fine.
thanks to Shanty for her exhibit.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, well, get the sign sent off and we'll see what response we get from the company, but thanks for that.
Thank you.
See ya.
Approved NIHAR contract for 509A actuarial certification.
It's our self-funding insurance that we have to have this report in, and I had to file with the state commissioners, insurance commission, with the state, we had to do it last year too, so it's just a
Now
formality
you've
that we
seen
have
it,
to
you
do.
can do it in-house.
No, I
right?
don't think we
No.
can.
I'll make
Nope.
that motion to approve that.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discuss vendor approval.
That's the same thing we do every year, you know, vendor approval, we have a notice downstairs of any related party that they're supposed to submit their vendor listing, or vendor approval to the board, so I just wanna make sure the board still wanted to do that, or,
Everybody's submitted their,
I only got 2 last year, that was from John Smith and Boswell Water.
what do we have this year, same two?
If the sheet metal and
They
Mega
got-
Ink had submitted them, it would have been a different finding in the audit. I think it's a good process to follow, even if the dollar figures have increased.
Make a motion to it.
And both of those others were way over the, allotment.
Do you wanna, I think last year we put an ad in the paper as well, do you want that again?
And I would reach out to those other 2 vendors to make sure that they get something in.
You will?
Sure, I can do that.
Yep. I'll mention something to Mega. Talk to Sherry or something. I guess it's not approved yet, it should be.
We got a vote from Mike, I'll second it, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I thought it was gonna be high for like.
Review quarterly report.
It's just the auditor and the treasurer, I didn't make a copy of it, it's just our annual. There's ours.
Is everything acceptable?
Yeah, it's just what money that we received in, so it's just a formality, you guys, you don't have to act, you just have to review it.
It's good to me.
Well, since Rochelle signed it, I guess I'm good with it.
I know, well, I know, I out there.
Do a motion for that?
No, we just have to review them.
Anybody see anything in claims, or do you guys wanna wait?
I didn't know if anything, but that's. Make a motion to accept claims.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other business for the board supervisors?
Special meeting this afternoon for Care Connections, Regional Mental Health, looking at providing some funding to 23-hour crisis assessment center in Sioux City. Also allows access to one in Sac City, so hopefully it kind of covers the entire region. Ongoing discussions as to improving that or changing that to be an assessment center as required by code as well, but kind of a, I don't know, with the state providing the funding now, it's kind of changed the direction to provide some of the overhead for these types of facilities versus just fee for service and pay so much for it. So have that, but it's buying into making sure that those services are available to our residents, I guess. Like this would be approved, I don't know for sure, but
I think it's a good idea. We got everything else squared away with our rock and everything, Rochelle, for the filling of our holes.
Fill the boards to match.
Any update on the windows, still on
He's
the
definitely in the
schedule?
first weekend of August, is what he told me. He's coming on Friday to meet with the architect to go over a few things, because Chris still wonders the stone booth, so. Yeah. We're trying to work around the court schedule. We're kind of busy in August, so. Yeah, but Matt said he would work with us, so. Sooner the better.
I thought they were supposed to start in July.
Well, I don't know if we're gonna get here till after July.
Everything's backed up. Get a chance to come to Fern. Are you chasing that egg? No? See? All those in favor of adjournment? Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, it's 11:20. It is District 9. Mr. Jones? I'm assuming you're here? Yep. Mr. Helmers? Here. Mr. Moore? Here. And Mr. Brandon over there. Are you sure? Yeah. Making a bathroom run. Any additions or subtractions to today's agenda?
I don't have any. All of them look good, right?
Good.
Staff is
Motion.
approval.
Motion to support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any corrections to the June 22nd, 2021 minutes? See anything there? All those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discuss approve televising pipes. Cole, take it away.
Okay, so on July 22nd, we discussed, televising, of DB 43, for, compliance with manufacturer specifications on deflection of, at, 90 cents per linear foot, for the system, to make sure that the contractor has installed, the pipe, within specifications. And that we're not going to see, any sort of major failure, due to deflection of the pipe. So, that televising, would be, through ISG. So we'd be looking for the board's, approval, to proceed with, televising for the pipes. And I guess the other thing, that we discussed, in terms of a warranty bond, that still, is, good for 2 years, after the construction of the project, regardless of this televising.
We had discussed this at the time coming up to the, actually at the, engineering report timeframe, and then as we moved into the bidding process, final plans for bidding, that we recommend on plastic pipe to televise afterwards to verify for sure, because obviously we're not out there 100% of the time during inspection. And it's a way to verify for sure if we got any segments of the pipe that we're getting more deflection. And if that deflection is being caused because of inadequate soils or whatever alongside of the pipe, we'd like to be able to catch that and address those. The contractor is responsible to go back to address those. The contractor's been doing, very good job installation. Soils have been solid. There's a good spoon shape through everything that's getting installed. He's had 2 stretches along there where he... 3 now?
Yeah, 2 on 43, 1 on 9.
Where he ran into soft, water boiling type soil, sand materials, and went to full rock bedding, throughout those stretches. By doing 43, since we're through 43, doing 43 now gives us early on and gives the contractor early on, comfort in regard to the fact that the installation looks good, we're not seeing any deflection. His compaction method for fill alongside the hunches, the top hunches of the pipe, he's using with a excavator doing that work. This way we also can verify that he had no places where he got too much pressure on the pipe and basically deflected the pipe from his method of installation or compaction over top of the pipe. So, this here is a cost, it's insurance to the district landowners by the fact that this cost isn't the responsibility of the contractor. The trustees have basically approving this in the interest of the landowners to make sure everything stays in compliance and we got a good job of the installation.
What was the cost here?
90 cents a linear foot, so there's
7,035 feet of tile. So,
What, $7,000.
Wouldn't we be better off to wait a while?
What you find we will wait towards the end of the project now for going up number 9. This again is ensuring that his use of equipment and stuff for the compaction isn't causing any problems. Your rapid deflection will typically show up early on, and then as you get wet, moisture, soil conditions, then you'll get more trench settling. But if you got a good envelope around the pipe, most of that's gonna not transfer into your pipe. So we're just, the fact that 43 is complete and we can do this stretch, give the contractor comfort, give the board comfort, give us verification that his work is, looking good. We just thought it'd be good to go ahead and do 43 now, and then we'll wait towards the end of the project to do 9.
I still think we'd be better off to wait.
We would expect that, the highest amount of deflection is gonna be within weeks of basically installation.
I don't agree with you with that. I know he's got bound, but how will you ever know if you do it right now in 2 years if there is deflection? Unless you go and
I think what they're trying to do now is to go and see if anything didn't get installed properly at the get-go, rather than wait. It's easier to fix it now, it's already reflected.
But you won't run a camera down it again, will you?
No, not through this.
So how would you know in the 2 years whether there was deflection or not?
Again, we will be able to see if there's been any areas that we got excessive deflection occurring right now.
Yeah, I understand.
And if everything's properly installed, this deflection that we're gonna see into the pipe will show up early on in regard to the life of the pipe. If you will not go back at the end of the 2-year period, you will have to have it televised prior to that, so he knows if he's got a problem, because you have 2 years to force him to come back and fix it. So we would be looking to televise the rest of number 9 at close to the end of the project, and go ahead, and then while we have him actually on site, if there's anything that's showing up suspicious, it can be identified. He would be put on notice that these areas will have to be rechecked. That cost will come back to him at that point. And if there's anything that we find that he has to do repairs of. So,
just a question, are we better off to televise it now, or wait a year and a half and then televise?
That's my point.
We're basically looking to wait that year and a half for the rest of number 9, the longer stretch. This again is giving us insurance that he is comfortable, that his installation methods and stuff, we're not seeing deflections in the pipe caused by backfill methods, and basically he's not getting adequate support alongside of the pipe, and we're seeing quick deflection in the pipe.
So when 9's done, you won't do that right away?
No.
See, I was under the impression we were gonna do them both as soon as they were done.
This will help determine if we just wait a full year after 9 is done to do the televising.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea to televise.
Yeah,
How much of 9 is done currently?
9 is, we're coming up on station 37, which would be about a fifth of 9 is completed.
And the concern about deflection is in the deeper portions, right?
Deflection can occur really anywhere. 37 though, in regard to the deeper portions, we are starting to get into that, and that's where we'll be going to the call out, full rock envelopes.
So the rock envelope for the deep burial is to ensure that we're controlling deflection through the deep burials. And that, the plans all had that called out, that when we got the deep burial, we're going to rock. So the other thing that we're having, which is the contractor's responsibility, we are having him have density tests done on different areas, trench on 43, and also up on 9, on the early part of 9, so that we have full documentation that his compaction was meeting the required 80–85% for backfill alongside of the pipe. So that's occurring right now. And, you know, if those tests are good, you know, obviously we can't see up this pipe. And, you know, if we get this first 43 segment televised, there was concern by the board early on about the plastic pipe. This is just helping everybody have a little more comfort zone that this plastic pipe is gonna perform just fine.
I'll make a motion to televise the pipe.
I'll support it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consider application for partial payment number 3.
So a lot of times we're not here for this. Do you guys want me to just cover what the general stuff is quick?
I see you've already signed off on it, so this must be within the scope of the contract.
Yep, so DD 43 parallel tile, is substantially complete. So all items on DD 43 are considered 100% there's still the 10% retaining withheld on it, so that's still out there to get him to do his minor.
Just to interrupt, is the change order being paid in this application too?
Correct.
You should go through change order first. Okay, verify the change order, then the pay app, since the pay app is paying items of the change order.
Where is the change order? Alright, approved change order for number 3.
Okay, so the change order, some fairly minor stuff, so, we added to the contract 12.25 HDPE 6-inch single wall. That was to chase back a tile that, needed to be tied into the new tile, with the offset alignment. It just needed to be brought over by default. 20% or 20 feet of tile is assumed to be needed for the connection. An additional 60 feet was needed, and the contractor gave us a price of $3 per linear foot for single wall 6-inch, which is, for installation, is a good price on that, especially with the plastic prices. So a minor increase there, and then we had decreases of tile connections, so there's less tile connections than what we were expecting, 2 less specifically. Tile trench and stabilization cradling rock was decreased by 29.41 tons, which means trench conditions were more stable than what we expected. We didn't need to go to rock as often as what we were estimating, so we ran into a lot of big clay soils. We decreased bid item 12.20, 30-inch HDPE elbow section, with some minor tweaks in alignment with what ended up in the field. That 30-inch elbow section wasn't required, so it's been removed from the contract. And then we've increased bid items 11.04 and 11.05, which are CMP surface drain, 15-inch diameter, and CMP tile extension, 12-inch diameter, to match the actual quantity, which was needed to properly complete installation. So, with the CMP surface drain, after regrading of the ditch, it was just slightly wider, and to get it so that the slope wasn't absurd on it, and get it out over into the ditch. Channel, an additional 20 feet, was needed. And then for tile extensions, we were only, during survey, we found 1 tile extension going to the ditch. Once the ditch banks were full, 2 tile extensions, additional tile extensions, were found, which each get 20 feet of CMP on the end of them.
Total dollar adjustment.
Total dollar adjustment, so with the increases and decreases, we end up with an increase of $438.88.
So there should be a separate motion for approval of the change order. Is that number 2?
Number 3.
Number 3.
I'll make that motion.
Support. All those in favor of this change order?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Alright, back to our application for partial payment number 3.
Okay, so as I mentioned, 43 main tile is 100% complete, aside from the 10% retainage, so, if any minor items come up, we can have them go back, and repair that stuff for the 10% that's being held on it. The open ditch, we were waiting on a few things, at the time, which were, Class D riprap rock tickets, and, rock tickets for, his erosion stone that he's using for the grade check. And then open ditch fertilizing and seeding has not been complete, since it, at the time, it had been super dry. So, obviously, we're not recommending, any seeding until we get at least some moisture conditions. Otherwise, we're just gonna throw seed on the banks for it to get blown away by the wind. So, the DD-43 open ditch, is 68% complete. The other item, that we paid, within, this would be for secondary road crossings of 160th Street. that would be the county gravel, just north of Roxmouth around east-west. And then also, we had paid, for the jack and bore of the 36-inch steel casing pipe under Highway 9 for, DD 9. Board have any questions?
Contractor's been making good progress out there. He's getting, so, if he's got the good, clay soils and stuff, he's getting 700 feet a day and stuff, so he's moving along well. The junction structure below, Redwood is in place, tile hooked up to that, right? Yep. And so you said he's how many feet past Redwood?
3,700 feet.
So, it's doing good.
Yeah, good conditions.
I'll make a motion to make the partial payment.
All those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And you can sign these. I have it in there. Like, they can get 40 copies of that back.
I'm happy with this.
Add signing it, there's 3 copies there that they need, I can just give it back to Colt and get his copies, I don't have to mail it in the mail.
Day to day or two. Depending on how the postal service does. I recently had a package got lost for 1.5 months from the moving, so.
We still got one, don't we?
Yes.
Make a motion to adjourn for that meeting.
I'll second that. All those in favor of adjournment of District 9? All those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Shelby? Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor? And I'm here. Any additions or subtractions to page 64 and 65 agenda? Now I'd take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. All those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any corrections to the June 22nd, 2021 minutes? Hearing none, I'd take a motion. Second that. All those in favor? All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review letter from legal counsel.
That I forgot to make copies of.
Yep, I have those.
Thank you, because I was here, like, I said, 8 copies of that.
Code 10 goes out, and basically, there was a code change, in chapter 468 that deals with when you have to go to an engineer's report and also clarification as to when you have to go through, different, notice requirements. And with this being the first one that was happening, after this code change, we asked legal counsel to give a review as to what's required here going into 6465.
Okay, so Brian Young, reviewed, the code section as I was stated, Senate File 353, changed, section 468.126, which has to do, with, repairs and improvements, drainage districts, so fairly big code section when it comes to drainage districts. That's probably one of the most referenced ones, and ones that I've read the most, so a change of it, throws a curveball, I guess. But what, Brian Young, after his review, he notes, that, with the code change, as we were anticipating, repair work which exceeds $50,000, but is under the bid threshold of $139,000, would no longer, require an engineer's report. So that's why we proceeded with DD 64 and 65, in the form of the weather report, here to start out with. And the law went into effect here, on July 1st. So this means, without the engineer's report, that we weren't really sure, in regard to notice with landowners, how to proceed, whether that, would be in the form of an informational meeting or a hearing. Brian Young's review notes, that he would, recommend that the board proceed, with a hearing process. What would change is that notice only needs to be made, 20 days in advance. The 40-day criteria does not need to be met for, this, if there's not an engineer's report. In addition, with, the code change, and no engineer's report, is that, the bid threshold. So whether, competitive bids are needed or not, we do not meet the threshold for competitive bids at $139,000, but we are in between the $50,000 and $139,000 range. This would mean, that we fall within the competitive quote range. So instead of, public bid advertising, the board, can solicit or ask us to solicit 3 contractors, or we recommend that you solicit at least 3 contractors for this work. And then similar process, to bid opening, as you review the, set a date for the quotes to be, due to the auditor's office, and then the board would then review the quotes and award, the contracts. So, and you have,
Yeah, and, you know, again, we're dealing with drainage district 64 and 65, 2 stretches of open ditch, that continue on upstream, you know, from 65 continues upstream from 64. Why was them formed as 2 separate districts? Well, they started with 64 and then later decided, well, we should have additional ditch upstream, made another district, and so, and there's ugly history here again. You got 2 separate districts, but the landowners of 65 were not assessed in 64, correct? Correct. And there's only a portion of the, well, there's 2,500 acres here that need to be annexed into this 65. You could not merge these 2 districts together until after you have annexation completed. So there's a lot of stuff going on with both of these districts, but by the fact that they're separate districts, and if you do the construction as separate districts to get the clean out done, and then basically at the end, want to merge them after they've gotten their ditches both back up into shape, that's a possibility that you could look at doing once you have them completed. We can do the construction project as a joint project, just like we're doing on 43 and 9, where you jointly do them so that you ain't got 2 separate contracts running out there and increasing additional costs from contractors. But since they're 2 individual, they're both work for both of these districts is under the $139,000. So you, but if we go to joint construction, we will have to go to sealed bids for the bidding, because we will be over the 139 if we're going to take the work as 1 contract. So what we're doing here is we want to make sure that notice process, that hearing, if hearing was required, what type of notice had to be given. The the lawyer has confirmed that. Yes, you still, even though we don't have to have a true formal engineer's report, you have a preliminary report that, you can go to hearing with, and you are required to have hearing. You just don't have to set the date 40 days out. You need to give a minimum of 20-day notice. We are recommending that, we proceed and would like to reset the hearing date for August 10th, is what we are really trying to get accomplished here today. And then we have to have time and place, obviously, established with that.
And then with the, August 10th is obviously not a hard date, with board members possibly being gone, we can set it out further. There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah, you could set it a different date, but, you know, if we have it in August, we should be able to turn around and go out for bids this fall, with construction could start after crop harvest this fall, with completion, we'd probably give them, it's what, $178,000 of work. We'd probably give them until September 1st or something, so that they can meet their seeding aspects. And if we got a dry summer, they can seed it in the fall.
I'm fine with an August 10th date for that one too. There's not that.
There is no remonstrance right, it's truly repair, no remonstrance right, but landowners definitely may have a lot of questions about two districts, and the fact of all the annexation, people in 65 complaining about having to help pay for 64 down below, you know, so that's why definitely having a hearing to inform everybody is important. And there's, outside of 64 getting annexed, there's a fair number of acres that weren't paying assessments in
65 was pretty good in terms of annexation. There's actually probably some lands that need to be excluded, from 65, more or less.
Okay.
I don't know how it was determined that that land was ever flowing in, so.
So is everybody okay with having that hearing August 10th?
Sounds good.
Is there a time we want to do that? The other one's at 1:30, right?
Yep.
How
I would
long do you
recommend,
think that one will take, the first one?
with it being an improvement, with it, landowners not, used to file improvements yet in both Dixon and Osceola County, I would make sure you give yourself an hour and a half of that.
Okay.
3 then, does that work? We did the one at 1:30 and then this at 3
I think so.
Okay.
in here again.
I would entertain a motion for 3 o'clock.
Make that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Anything else you guys need to add on this, or we good?
Nothing else, I guess, within his letter, just some stuff that doesn't have to do with the hearing, but that he notes, that, annexation and reclassification, annexation can still be completed pursuant to chapter 468, 119, which is what we're used to, and that, reclassification report is still needed. And then the code change that Rochelle's going to like to hear is that, and then you guys also probably will enjoy that, they changed it so that the full schedules, do not need to be published to the newspaper. They can be posted online as long as they're also, posted in the courthouse. So there will not be any massive publications that list schedules of stuff, so.
Save the district a lot of money.
Yes.
But then you'll still need an engineer's report for the reclassification
a commissioner's report for reclassification, so you still have to have, and you have to have annexation report, yes.
Yeah, because it says, well, it says here, an engineer's report is required for annexation.
Yeah.
So we still have to have that.
Correct.
And for the reclass.
Yeah, it's really just a change to get away from these huge schedules, like, we had Drainage District 34 in Buenos County, which is directly, there's 150,000 acres. And you have all that schedule that you're dealing with, I mean,
Eighteen of 43.9 was quite a bit, so.
So posting, where we post, like we normally post things down below there, or?
Yeah, so it would need to be uploaded, to your, county website, and then also, just posted, and also have it posted in the office post, so.
Okay. So you're working on letters and see if I have to have those out next week, especially for 20